And let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Knights of the Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and I am excited to be here with you with the end of our Mech Week celebration. We're on a roll. We are trying to break some of our previously established records for least popular streams of all time. Girls by Moonlight used to be a high contender. Hillfolk was another one that was unbelievably unpopular. Let's see if we can actually complete a trifecta here. Now, Lancer proved to be somewhat more popular than I would have expected, but after Beacon, it was a significant drop-off. Tenro Bancho Zero? Yeah, nobody's watching that. And then tonight, you here, in the 10 of you here live, may in fact be the only people that ever see this. So we'll see. This will be a lot of fun. So shout out to Karima for this gold ticket addition to the First Look queue. As we've of course been having fun lately, the chat highlighting is of course broken. I do have a ticket out to the developer. Hopefully they can figure out what they broke and why it just sporadically doesn't work anymore. But that's okay. We're gonna get into it right away. We spent enough time these last couple of days, and quite frankly, I can't do it anymore. All right, here we go. Oh, I did close Twitch. Forgot about Twitch. Let's see here on Twitch. It's crazy how many buttons you have to push to get to Twitch. All right. Hopefully that'll pick up Twitch there. Hi, Twitch. There it is. So anyway, welcome. Jake, no, there is no point to chatting if you can't do it. All right, so today we are going to be looking at a game that I assume was made by, just some person who liked robots. And we'll take a look at this. This is Battle Century G. And like Pathfinder 2, it has been remastered. We have a cover piece of a guy standing what looks like to be like in a high school front yard. And it's a really weird angle. And there's some, cool guns. So there's that. That is that. There are definitely guns there. This was re-released in 2022 by Juan Herrera. So shout out to them. Well, there's some people here, but they're kind of in the background. It looks like this chainsword is about the size of a semi truck. So I'm guessing they're kind of big. All right, so Gimmick, I guess, is the name, is what the creator goes by. So we've got a 300-page mech book with some the formatting looks like it was written in Microsoft Word or Google Sheets. We've got some lovely Times New Roman text here. Apparently they went with the smallest possible, text form. And hey, we don't need cool formatting. We can just make our chapter headings bold. That'll be enough. We've got chapter 1 is playing the game, and it's we've got levels and zones and sorry, you're right. It is Arial. My bad. Tasty Mystery Meat knows their fonts. Then we get writing the character, which is interesting. I guess that's creating the character. Then all sorts of traits and anomalies and themes and powers and powers and powers and powers and powers. Then we build the mecha. And lots of weapons and flaws and upgrades and all sorts of upgrades and beam weapons. And then we have a section on game mastering, including terrain, objectives, monsters, boss fights, boss weapons, boss upgrades. And then chapter 5 is, if you want to house rule some stuff, we've got, it looks like there's magic, custom weapons, magical stuff, a relationship theme, collateral damage. Chapter 6 looks like it is some form of built-in setting. And chapter 7 is called Copying the Homework. It looks like it's got a rogues gallery, some pre-made NPCs, as well as the 2 character sheets, a pilot sheet and a mecha sheet as well. I did download the character sheet for this, and I am going to say something here. The last week, we looked at Beacon, then Lancer, then Tenra Bancho Zero, and now today we are looking at Battle Century G. And all 4 of these games' character sheets sucked. These are like, and I'm going to say that like mech games may have the worst character sheets that we've ever seen on this show. And that's saying something. And even though Beacon isn't a mech game, let's call it what it is. It is a mech game. You're cosplaying as a person, but you're really a mech. And its character sheet was horrible. And this game does not disappoint. Mech game character sheets, basically, they should be called Blank Lines The Gathering. It is just a endless line, like a collection of just blank spaces. Just give me a blank page at this point. It really just doesn't matter. It's horrendously boring, unbelievably uninspired. Yeah. So again, this isn't really a critique on this particular game because they've all been terrible. All right. The introduction. Big blue. Now, see, this is okay. You want to talk about other reasons why I don't make a game? Because I don't have money for art, you know? I don't have money for art. So what am I going to put on this page? Nothing? Yeah, it's going to look like this. All right. What is Battle Century G? It is a tabletop role-playing game. I wasn't lying in the thumbnail. No clickbait here. All right. Well, we're not new to theater tabletop role-playing games. It's improvised theater meets multiplayer co-op. It's an interesting way to describe that there. Mech genre. Let's see. All right. Why should we play this? All right. Role-playing means different things to different people. You know what? I'm a big fan of when games do this. Why should you play my game? All right. It is very good at simulating giant robot fiction and other similarly styled action stories. Generic streamlined mecha system. Gameplay that emphasizes both smooth narrative and tactical gameplay. And balancing character options so that all PCs are competently about the same level. It is less good at detailed mecha customization where you track their weight, their fuel consumption, and the caliber of guns. I think they're not taking a shot, but they're saying this isn't Battletech. Gameplay focusing on the players having narrative control rather than about the actions of the characters themselves. Okay, so it doesn't have, narrative mechanics where the players can, seize control. Tables and charts, and a system for standalone adventures, more like movies than a TV series. Battle Century G switches between second and third person a lot. 3 to 7 players, D10 dice, 3 to 5 hours, index cards, and internet connection, snacks, and drinks. Each player will control an individual PC, and all of them will have a mech to ride into battle, mecha. Unlike in most fiction, there's no main character. That's not to say that you all can't contribute. NPCs. A typical game session of Battle Century G is structured so that there's some plot, some character development, and then giant robots fight. Again, I respect the honesty. There's a lot of similar things that we're seeing here over and over and over again. A lot of these games feel like they read the same. A typical game session of Battle Century G is structured it is divided into episodes, which are chained to arcs. Generally, each session where the group meets up to play is one episode. Each episode is divided into scenes. During a scene, you develop or progress the plot and then decide what you're going to do next. Scenes are intermissions and operations. The former are scenes focusing on the pilots, while the latter are mecha action scenes. So we have intermissions where you're the pilots and operations where you're the mecha. Typically, an intermission scene, that's where you're the pilots, doesn't last more than 10 to 20 minutes. So you can have several of them per episode. You then run an operation to end the session with a bang. Now, to be clear, this is how I thought that Lancer was structured, and Beacon. And unfortunately, it is not. In fact, a lot of teeth gnashing, not like in a bad way, but there's a lot of discussion going on in the Knights of the Last Call Discord about how do we make Lancer work for a mega game? Because apparently the idea of Lancer is that a mission might take 3 to 5 sessions and you might have one fight per session. And so this idea of resource attrition is supposed to occur over the course of, potentially 5 sessions. If you play every other week, it could take you, 2.5 months between, for quests, for missions, which means like, if you have your ultimate core power, you'll get that once every 2.5 months, which is why it's a little strange when people are like, no, core power is so important to the game. You have to have it. And it's like, okay, but if you were playing every other week, you would get it once a season, as in like in the spring and then again in the summer. You might use it 4 times a year. Anyways, this game, however, does seem to be structured around the idea of, basically, do some kind of fluffy bullshit time. I'm not saying there doesn't look fluffy bullshit, but do some pilot scenes and then hop in your mechs and then end the session with a cool mech fight. So I thought that's how Lancer was structured, but this one actually appears to be structured that way. Okay, so we're going to cover playing the game. We'll look about building a character and a mecha, and then we'll probably skip the GMing and house rule stuff. Enrique, I know nothing about this game. I'm sorry, I can't click on your chat because this thing is broken. It was one of our patrons put it up as a first look, and they spent their gold tickets to put it to the top because they wanted it for Mech Week. So we are here covering it. I assume this was written by a single author. But yeah, I mean, massive props and shout outs to anybody who makes their own game. I'm just simply saying that there's a lot of challenges that go in, it's a tough row to hoe. That's all I'm going to say. All right. As a rule set, Battle Century G stands out by combining the 3 principles below. 1, big damn heroes. I added the damn. The player characters are badasses. I have a hard. It's so funny. It's so funny, this hobby of ours, because obviously I've been spending a lot of time reading the One Ring books. And so contrasting that game with something that's like, the PCs are badasses on par with any character from mecha fiction. They can start as the equivalent of nameless, faceless grunts, but will quickly grow into infamous big heroes. And then they have to stand up to the big villains. Moreover, half the point of this system are cool mech fights. And those are as over the top as you can imagine. Punch a mountain so it explodes, shoot people out of orbit and into the sun. Let your imagination go wild. Karamine, I'm seeing why you put this game up. Fast-paced. The rule set emphasizes cinematics over realism. Outside of combat, most resolutions are resolved with a single die roll. The battles themselves never slow down, getting more intense with each passing round of combat. Fights usually end in no more than 5 rounds. Most doing in 3 or less. You can lengthen the duration of a fight with bigger battlefields or puzzle elements, but by default, the action set pieces are fast and deadly. Dramatic. Every PC has a variety of moves to change failures into successes, buff a super attack, interrupt any enemy actions, and more. These abilities can be combined to create deadly finisher moves or to render a boss monster's lethal attacks harmless. By choosing when and how to use said abilities, you can set up every fight to guarantee you will have a cool moment. By playing intelligently and coordinating with your team and exploiting the weaknesses of your enemy's plan, you can control the flow of gameplay and make every battle be a kick-ass and cinematic experience. So yes, is this the opposite of the One Ring Second Edition? It might be. So we've got some glossaries for the setting. It looks like massive natural disasters. Humanity lived in what appear to be fallout shelters for 2,000 years. Deus Machina is the holy techno. It's kind of like all the mecha stuff combined into one. G reactors. Gears are a specific type of mech. Exosuit is a type of mech. Energy cred. There we go. Glow is a drug. Kaiju are mechabeasts. All right, we got a bunch of stuff here. All right. And then we've got also glossaries for the terms that the game will use. Attributes, points, genres, etc., etc., etc. Genre powers. It seems like every mech game has some sort of is that like some sort of ultimate mecha supercharged ultimate attack? All right, a lot of glossary of terms here. We got an example of play. All right, so how do we play the game? You roll a d10 and then check your result against the difficulty number of what you were trying to do. If the result is equal to or greater than the DN, you have a success. Okay. The act of rolling is called a test. You almost always want to roll high. High or better. All characters have different odds at different things. To represent this, all characters have a bonus to their rolls called attributes that are added to their dice rolls. The better you are at doing something, the higher your bonus will be. Often you will have advantage or disadvantage. This is 5e, advantage and disadvantage, except we're using d10s. So that's it. So it's instead of a d20, it's literally 5e, but you're using a d10 instead of a d20. It has advantage and disadvantage, and you're adding modifiers based off of your attributes or skills, and you want to get roll high so that you can beat the DC, which this game calls the DN. That's it. Okay. So it talks a little bit about the structure of the game. Again, it's set up like an episode. Episodes are divided into intermission scenes where the pilots do stuff and operation scenes when the mech comes out. Usually the GM sets the very first intermission scene by gathering the PCs together with a common goal. The PCs will roleplay their personalities, make some tests, have a bit of banter, and then move the scene along. When the scene is finished, the GM will either have a new prompt for the group or will ask them if they might have things they'd like to do together or individually. Players don't really take turns. You just kind of go in whatever order. At some point during the episode, the PCs will board their mechs, either in response to an enemy attack or because they are the ones doing the attacking themselves. We then go to an operation scene. Thank you, Cal.
Calderiac tipped $3. Yes, it is in fact illegal, probably, to not have a supercharged mech form or Bandai Namco will find you.
All right, so apparently that is, that is in the contract. If you do a mech game, you have to have a supercharged mega ultimate attack. It's just, it's good for television, bad for game balance, apparently. But then you have a big operation, you have a big fight, and then after the fight scenes, you may want to do one last wrap-up intermission scene, like a debriefing. All right. It's pretty simple there. Pilots. Hey, Clapster Roll. Thank you for the $23 super chat. Appreciate you so much. Klopster Roll says D10 should be outlawed, and we should just switch to the 20-sided D10, the draw steel dice. Does draw steel use a D20 with sides labeled 1 through 10? It's funny that they do that because the original D&D dice, because again, the original D10s, people just used the D20 because the D20 was labeled 1 through 10 twice. And so what you had to do is you had to color in half of the sides, and then you like, okay, the red side is the teens, the white side is the single digits. And so that's how you made your D10, because there was no D10s back in the day. So I didn't know Klopster Roll. I didn't know Draw Steel did that. I mean, it isn't a platonic solid, right? So it can go kick rocks. That's all I'm saying. I used to be a D10 fan. You know, I always liked the D12, but you know, so I used to be a bit the D10 fan, and I always liked the D12, but you know, as time has gone on, the D10 is pretty much dead to me. And it is D12 all the way. So our characters have attributes. They are labeled from rated from 0 to 10. We have fitness, which is like our strength, but it's also our constitution. We have intellect, which is our intelligence. We have charm, which is kind of like our charisma. We have awareness, which is a bit like our wisdom, but more of the perceptive element of it. We have willpower, which is a little bit like mental toughness. So it looks like they kind of took wisdom and split it into willpower and awareness. And then we also have a stat called resources, where it represents, so we don't really have, so fitness is actually dexterity. Yeah, okay, it's con, dex, and strength in one stat, which is interesting. Now, I don't know if this is specific, but from a game design perspective, I actually kind of like this, because in a mech game, the 3 stats that matter the least are your physical stats, right? In a mech-based game, your dexterity, your endurance, and you know, your constitution, or whatever, your dexterity, your constitution, and your strength are the least important stats, because most of the time when you're using those stats, it's usually something involving, you know, being, you know, in combat or doing something cool, in which case you're probably in a mech anyways. So I think it's actually a cool decision. Again, I'm assuming that's why they did that, which is just to combine all the physical stats into just one overall stat, which, again, leaves you with, you know, of course, you still have to have 6 stats. That's the law. And that lets us kind of break these things out. And so now we get to be able to have willpower and awareness, intellect and charm, but then we also get a resources stat, which is kind of similar to the status stat. No, what was it called? Yeah, status, I think it was called, from Tenra Bancho, which we looked at yesterday, which is interesting. Yes, I mean, I think 3 stats is awesome. I think 4 stats is great. I think 5 stats is okay. I'm really big these days, I think, into 3. I think 3, you know, Mythic Bastion Land really sold me on 3 stats, and then the One Ring has really been selling me on 3 stats. So, body, you know, it's actually, okay, this is a tangent. But, you know, speaking of the One Ring, let me see. So do I have a character card? No, maybe I do. I don't know. What is this? Oh, here we go. Pre-generate characters. Okay. So as everybody knows, you know, the One Ring has 3 stats: strength, heart, and wits. And everybody was kind of like, why is strength used for song and stuff like that? Well, here's the thing. It's because it's from a line from the Hobbit, or from the Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf says to Frodo, you know, you must use what strength, heart, and wits you have. But what's interesting in this game is strength is everything related to the body. So strength is also a sort of a representation of how beautiful you look and how awe-inspiring you are and how basically how good you look as well. So everything physical is represented by this strength stat, which is kind of interesting. So in terms of comeliness, as Jackal was saying, in the One Ring, that would be represented by strength. I find that there's really no reason there's no reason to have it's you're getting into such the juice isn't worth the squeeze element there. There's no reason to have all these different stats. There isn't. Because we're not there's just no reason for it. It's so irrelevant 99% of the time. It's just minutia that, quite frankly, is representable of a different way and time and place that we have. Okay, so like pilots, mechs have their own attributes. These are also rated from 0 to 10. These are more limited in nature because giant robots are fighting machines and their attributes revolve around combat. They have might, this attribute that gives big guns to make big explosions and big hands to make rip and tear enemies. It also covers things like efficient targeting systems. Interesting. Might gauges basically how good is a mech at defeating other mechs. Okay. Guard is the counterpart to mech. It's how evasive and how tough you are. Threshold is the second half of making a giant robot that can withstand enemy haps. It represents how sturdy your internals are and how it holds up against damage that is taken. So damage threshold is like HP. So guard is like your AC from evasiveness and from being tough, and threshold is your HP. Energy is every time you use your abilities, especially energy barriers and beam weapons. Systems is for your, using your, not your guns, fire suppression systems, emergency repairs, finding hidden or cloaked enemies. And speed is how fast you can fly, run, or hover. High speed is what lets Mecha break the speed of sound. Low speed means that a giant robot will walk only slightly faster than a human runs. Okay. In the narrative, here's a list of what 0 to 10 means. Advancement. All right. How do you get good in this game? After every episode, your PC is granted a few XP by the GM, but XP doesn't do anything on itself. That's because whenever you gain XP, you also gain the same number of character points and mecha points. Character points can be used to train up your PC's attributes and get new skills or traits, and mecha points are used to upgrade your mech or get new weapons. To put it simply, your XP can be used to power up your pilot and your mecha in equal measure. So basically you get, if the GM says you're getting 5 XP, you really get 5 CP and 5 MP. Basically, you get to upgrade your mech and your character at the same time. So maybe it's not a level-based game, in which case that's cool. I will admit, okay, never mind. It sort of, maybe it doesn't sound like it has a level, but it does see like it has a power level. So this is starting to kind of feel like Mutants and Masterminds. It has 6 different power levels. The general rule is every 30 XP you earn, you go up a power level. So it's not like a level. It's more of just like a way of categorizing how powerful you are, what tier you are based off of how much XP you have. So if you do have 150 XP, you are godly. Note that all characters start with 100 XP. This starting XP does not count towards your power levels. That means a PL5 PC has 250 plus XP total. Got it. Okay, so you start with 100. So this very much sounds like Mutants and Masterminds then. They even call it power level in Mutants and Masterminds. Genre themes and genre points. If attributes define what the characters are like, then themes define what their life revolves around. Themes will give shapes to a PC's wishes, flaws, and relationships. They're not necessarily objectives or personality traits, but they're more like patterns, cliches, or leitmotifs that your PC will explore. Interesting. Whenever one of your character's themes helps to advance the plot, or contributes to a character development, or makes your life harder for your PC, you get a genre point. Genre points can be used to activate special abilities called genre powers. So it's kind of like a hero point system or a fate point system, right? You get them when your themes matter to the story, or if it's an important character development moment, or if your theme kind of comes to bite you in the ass. And then apparently you have special powers that can only be activated with these GPs. Your starting GPs each episode is equal to your power level, and there is no upper level that you can stockpile. You may earn them through role-playing your themes on your own initiative, but situations that make your themes relevant can be instigated by the GM, other players, or come up entirely by coincidence. Themes also will change over time, such as a character's convictions becoming a vice, a weakness that is solved. Other times, though, if you're just having fun with your themes, and you don't like how your themes are playing out, you can change them during downtime between the episode arcs. It tells you about what starting power level to start at. Test. Roll a d10, add your attribute value, which remember is rated from 0 to 10, and compare it against the DC. And we have DC 5, 10, 15, and 20. So there you go. So easy, experts, really impressive against all odds. As a rule of thumb, most of the things your PC is doing will not be tests. You'll just do them if it's something in danger, someone is trying to stop you, or if there would be meaningfully negative consequences for failure. Cleaving a character, a mech in two with your sword is a test. Crossing the street is just a thing that you do. We also have advantages and disadvantages. Should a test have both, they cancel out. Each instance cancels each other one for one. It doesn't look like you can... they stack just like it... Okay. They stack. You can have multiple advantages, multiple disadvantages. Players may trade in their advantages for a bonus of +2 to the result. The GM may also trade away a single disadvantage to a PC to give them a -2. Generally speaking, you want to use your first 1 or 2 advantages to better your odds as extra dice, but after that, you should convert it into a flat bonus. That's an interesting concept. I mean, you do get diminishing returns on advantages, right? Like by the time you're rolling 3d10, keep high, it's not really adding that much. I mean, you're going to get probably, an 8, 9, or 10. You have to figure out the math for that, I guess. In the same fashion, when rolling with disadvantages, blah, blah, blah. All right. Pretty basic there. All pilots and mech have a defense sub-attribute that protects them from harm. To strike at a pilot or mecha, you must beat their defense with your test. For pilots, it's awareness +5. For mecha, it is guard +5. So remember, those are stats from 0 to 10. So if our mecha's guard is 5, we are DN 10. Our defense is 10. If an attacker beats your defense, you take damage equal to the difference between your result and the test. Okay, so high roll means more damage. If you only just match their defense with your result, you deal no damage. Some abilities in the game will have special effects when you strike a target, like setting them on fire or stunning them. You did hit them, but you didn't do any damage otherwise. Interesting. Okay. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but like Legend of the Five Rings, right? For every success that you get on an attack roll that exceeds the TN, you get an extra point of damage. And I like that system. It means when you roll high, you feel like you're doing a lot of damage, which is really cool. So I do tend to like systems like that. For sure. What's up, Darth? Good to see you. I'd shout you out, but my little thingy-majiggy is broken, so it does not work. I'm sorry. All pilots have a plot Ooh, all right. All pilots have a plot armor sub-attribute representing how much damage they can take before being depleted. Plot armor is measured in layers, of which every character has 3. These slowly track damage as it progresses from a bruise to a flesh wound to a broken bone. Each layer of plot armor can withstand a certain amount of damage equal to the character's willpower. When you take damage, you remove a number of plot armors from your topmost layer, and once it's out of that, you go to the next layer. Losing each layer has a chance of you being defeated. For Mecha, the amount of damage they can withstand is equal to their threshold attribute. This works much like plot armor does, except they have 4 threshold levels, and they lose limbs instead of having a chance to be defeated. The rules for these will be explained in more detail later. Damage dealt to either track is not permanent and will heal with time. Pumpkin says, finally a game called brave enough to call it what it is. HP is plot armor. All right. Again, skill tests are D10 plus your attribute. You might have advantage if you're trained in a skill. So skills trainings give you an advantage. I like that. Simple, straightforward. You can have a contested test, in which case whoever rolls higher is the winner. If you roll a tie, keep rolling. We have extended tests where potentially you may have to make multiple tests. So kind of like, standard stuff there. Mixed test is if, you need to make multiple different tests of different attributes, blah, blah, blah. Helping tests. If you want to help, you can make them, you can instead grant them an advantage for each multiple of 10 that you meet with your help test. So unfortunately, helping is both unlimited and revolves a dice roll, which are both problems that I don't like. I prefer helping to be 1, automatic, and 2, not to involve, not to be something that involves the helper making their own die roll. Just takes too much time and takes spotlight away from the person who's, we should be focused on. Healing tests. These are usually done through the medicine skill. A healing test is almost always an extended test, meaning it takes hours, minutes, days. You may restore all points to a layer of plot armor depending on how well you roll. You heal the first layer with a result of 10 or more, the second layer with a 15 or more, and the third layer needs a 20. Higher results. So if you get a 20 on a medicine test, you heal all of their plot armor. You heal all their first layer, second layer, and third layer. You can obtain equipment. You can temporarily obtain equipment, as in the traits of that type, through the resource attribute. This usually requires a scene to go and look for such goods, make a check, and you could potentially get temporary equipment that negates penalties and the like. However, your resources are not bottomless. If you make one of these resource checks, you now have disadvantage for the rest of the episode. All right. Tension. So it looks like we've got a kind of a 13th age escalation die system. This is a dynamic number that increases after every round is passed, starting at 1 for the first round. Offensive tests, which is to say tests made to attack, add the tension to the result of a test. Straightforward. Couple of things though. I like this. One of my house rules, when I made 13th age, it's just, I hated this. So in 13th age, everyone, most people are aware of the escalation die mechanic. In 13th age, the idea is that you have a big D6. And what happens is it starts at 0. And then after the first round, you set the escalation to 1. And now all the PCs get +1 to hit, and certain really cool monsters like dragons. And the idea is that the monsters are designed a little bit, that their ACs and defenses are a little too high for perfect balance. And so basically the first round or 2, the players are kind of at a disadvantage. But then as this escalation die bonus builds up, eventually the players are able to, hit more often. And in theory, this is designed to sort of provide an incentive to keep the players from novaing and to make sure that the end of the fight kind of wraps up quickly. But I have one major problem with it. It's very unintuitive for the bonus from escalation to be 0 in round 1 and to be 1 in round 2 and to be 2 in round 3. And it just makes way more sense to me to be like, hey, it's round 1. The escalation bonus is 1. Hey, it's the start of round 2. Now the escalation bonus is 2. And this does that. So props to this person for making that result. Because you might say, isn't that stupid? Like, what do you mean? It just everybody starts at +1 in the first round? Yes, because if you're going to use this mechanic, you should make it make sense and make it easy to track and remember. Okay. So let's see. If you do have a match, this is when we, get violent and we attack. We have rounds that are divided into turns. If there is a surprise round, it is during round 0, which means that the tension is 0. So that is something to note. So it's almost like the surprise round is round 0, where the bonus is 0. Then normally you establish initiative. Everybody gets a fitness test. This becomes your initiative. Once everyone's initiatives are rolled, go from high to low. Tension goes to 1 and goes up by 1 at the end of each round. Whenever a character provides, and that's any character, it looks like, not just PCs or NPCs, it looks like, you get +1 for each round that it is. We go from highest to lowest, from fastest to slowest. Each character has a chance to take an action during their own turn. Turns are divided into 3 phases: setup, action, end. During the setup phase, the player decides what their character will do and how. They may also do things that are simple enough to not really take your whole turn or not take any dice rolls. Things like getting your firearm ready, getting a good look at your assessment around your surroundings. Once the player is done with these and have decided on their action for turn, the action phase begins. This is where you may move from one zone to the next, adjacent, but that movement takes place before the action, not the rest. Then make your roll if you take your action. Most actions take a roll. Then we go to the end phase. After characters have taken their action, the effects of said action are to be narrated and described. When a turn ends, the character with the next highest initiative starts their turn, and the sequence continues until the round is over. After the round is finished, the tension goes up by 1, and the order of initiative resets back to the first character. You do not re-roll everyone's initiative. So basically D&D initiative. We're rolling fitness for our test to see who goes first. And then the only exception we have here is there's kind of like you have to do all your action. You have to do all your secondary and tertiary actions first during the setup phase. Then you can move one zone, and you have to do that up to zones. So 0 to 1 zones, and it has to be before you take your action, your main action, which usually involves a dice roll. Then we wrap everything up. Okay. It's a zone-based game. If you're using maps, a zone is a square or a hex cell. Interesting. Boothby says, I started using an escalation die in one of my PF2 games. Boothby, I'm curious how that's going. Do you apply it to everyone or to just the PCs? Or maybe scary monsters or something? All right. Only offensive actions benefit from tension. Those being the ones from attack and suppress. When using an offensive test, you can move towards the target or circle around them. You can also stand still, but they don't let you go backwards or otherwise increase the distance between you and your target. I see. So, basically, if you're making an offensive test, you can't fall back. Interesting. I just love this. If you are lucky and talented or both, then you will inflict damage and cause them to lose plot armor equal to the amount you pass their defense by. Attacks are not always physical. Plot armor can represent physical and mental health too. A psychic assault may cause harm or paralyze, make them pass out or worse. There's an aim action. If you choose your target, your next offensive text against them will get 2 advantages. You can delay. You can suppress. Instead of trying to overpower your foe from the get-go, you can interfere with their game plan, holding someone down or shooting to provide a friend with cover. Make an offensive test as normal, but only deal half the usual damage you would do. If you at least meet their difficulty number, their defense, then the enemy gets a disadvantage to all of their tests until the beginning of your next turn. If you want to maneuver, you can do this and increase your defense by an amount equal to that attribute. You can run and move 2 zones instead of 1, but then you don't get to make any tests. So pretty basic here. Right, Cinnabos, no kiting. Boothby says that he's given it to PCs and boss. Plot armor, again, is divided into 3 layers. Fortunately, damage to plot armor heals naturally. The first layer, your first layer, automatically restores between scenes. The second layer automatically heals between episodes. And the third layer heals between episode arcs. I kind of like that system, right? This idea of you have 3 layers of hit points. Basically, the one is for every scene, for every fight. The second is for the whole session. And then the third is for multiple sessions. So if you take a ton of damage in, let's say, a fight, you might lose all of the plot armor in your first layer, all of the plot armor in your second layer, and even take some damage in your third layer, the one that has to last you over multiple episodes in this arc, multiple sessions. Then, as soon as that scene is done, your first layer heals back to full. So now you've kind of got this shield again, that sort of preliminary outer shield. And as long as that doesn't get tapped out, you'll be okay. But if it does get tapped out, you're going straight back to that third layer. But if you can finish the session and end the episode, then you get the full second layer back and, of course, the first layer back. And so now that third layer is a little bit more protected. It's a really kind of interesting way of doing this. It does, Ludo, remind me of Fate with the different tiers of consequences, or similar to Blades in the Dark, but this is using sort of multiple layers of hit points. I mean, plot armor is literally hit points. That's what they refer to it. They're just calling it plot armor. But it's kind of a cool way to think about, like, we think of hit points as this one monoculture. Hit points are not a monolith. But I think this is kind of a cool way to sort of represent longer lasting wounds. And so if you do take a lot of damage in a single scene, it can cause lasting consequences, but it doesn't fuck you over, which is great. Lionshead Gaming, it seems to be pretty traditional. It looks like it's going to be a somewhat, it uses D10s instead of D20s, but you're basically rolling just like a D20 game. D10 plus a bonus versus a DC. You might have advantage, you might have disadvantage. Seems pretty basic. Yeah, exactly, Wes. Think of it like an energy shield, right? So it's kind of like you have your quick charge shield, and then below that is sort of like your, you getting bruised or you getting beat up. And then below that is like you actually getting injured, right? And so you can almost think of it as like fatigue, bruised, injured, as like the 3 layers of hit points. And, once you lose all your fatigue hit points, now you start taking, things in the bruising layers. And then once you lose all your bruising layers, you start taking damage in the injury layer. But if the fight can end and you can get a few minutes to rest, catch your breath, that fatigue layer resets. But that hit point, that real crunchy damage layer persists, which I think is really interesting. So let's see here. What does defeat look like? Let's see here. It doesn't look like you die unless you want to. The outcome is that what's most reasonable, and usually a defeated character will be knocked out. This means that all characters are potentially immortal. A PC that messes up big time will continue to live, but they will have to deal with the consequences of their actions. Yada, yada. This should not be seen as a punishment for the GM, but as a chance to come back and be stronger. Thank you for the super chat, Lionshead. You have to catch the VOD. Awesome. Check out. So here's an example of an intermission scene. This is where you're kind of playing as your pilots. Again, the game says these are supposed to take 10 or 20 minutes. You might do a couple of them to start the session off, but then you want to get to your cool mech fight. Operations are what the game calls its fights. Operations are like matches, but with giant robots. So by the way, so what we were seeing above was the rules for fighting as a pilot. Okay. That's called a match. An operation. Thank you so much for the super chat, Lionshead Gaming. This is for Mech Week. Let's rock. Chain guns firing. Thank you, Lionshead Gaming. Yeah, again, I have to go to PAX. I'm kidding. But I have to go to PAX. But when we get back, we'll probably take a look at as a sort of a finale. We'll probably take a look at like Mech Warrior, Battletech, or something. Just because we've been talking about all this mech, and I want to talk about the mech game that I like. So very cool. Wes, I like that. Shields, armor, health. I like that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I know people have talked about armor astir. People have also talked about beam saber as well. Cinnabon says in Eve, it's your shields, then your armor, then your hull. That also sounds cool, Cinnabon. Now, I believe when you're in your mecha, okay, you get 4 layers of armor. So operations are like matches, but with giant robots. So a match is where you are your pilot and you're fighting other people. Okay. Operations are where you are, locked and loaded. You're in your big mech. So as it says, it's like the match rules, but they have some rules of their own. During an operation, each combatant is called a unit, and the pilot and mecha are referred to as one entity. All units that are allies with each other are called squad goals. Mecha are superior to regular characters in almost every way. They can cover multiple zones per turn with ease, whereas a character on their own can only do one. They can withstand attacks that would more or less vaporize a regular person. Shout out Glitter Boy. This is why they, for the most part, operate on rules that are similar to this, but separate to the PCs. AKA, we use the same rules, but we understand that they are on a very different scale, right? A mecha's stats are rated from 0 to 10. A pilot's stats are rated from 0 to 10. That does not mean that they are equal, okay? A pilot's attributes, skills, and traits have no bearing on operations. The grand majority of the time, only their genre powers will be relevant, which is, I think, a very smart way to do it. Hey, it's the same, but we understand that now, you're still attacking with +5 strength or +5 might, but now you're punching through buildings instead of just, breaking a wooden board or a concrete block. Darth Malicious, did I play the Mech PC console games? Hell yeah, Darth Malicious. I played a ton of Mech Warriors 2, 3, and 4. I never played the 5th one, and I never played the original one because that was a little too. I was a little too young. I wasn't in Mech, but Mech Warrior 2 Mech Warrior 2 and 3 were games I played a shitload of. I've never played any like the strategic Battletech games, so I've only played like mech games. I've never played any of the other ones that like the new ones that are quite frankly apparently are just like shooter games. I don't know. I assume nowadays that like any modern game is just like basically Call of Duty clone. So I don't want to profess that I know anything about it, but like I haven't played any of the other mech games. I've only played Mech Warrior. Don't do Beam Saber. It's too close to Blades in the Dark. Okay. For Mech Warrior, do you plan to check out A Time for War or Mech Warrior Destiny? Hardrick, I have no idea. I don't know what the difference is between those two. All right. So, operation structure. First, choose your equipment. Units with combinations or ultimate forms must choose how they will deploy. This step does not always apply. Hence, it is step 0. Then we deploy. At the start of operation, each unit deploys in formation at the edge or near the edge of the battlefield. So it's almost more like a war game. And similar to Lancer and stuff, right? Where you have this deployment phase. Units deploy with their energy reserves full. Then we established the initiative by having each unit test their speed. This is the mech's speed. Then we sent the tension to 1. We apply this to all might tests. Now remember, in this game, might is a mecha attribute, which is basically used for hurt other mecha. I think you use it for ranged combat as well as melee combat. Then we go from high to low in initiative. First, we have a setup phase. We refresh all of our energy at the beginning of our turn, and then we decide how we're going to act this turn. Then we may move a number of zones equal to our speed attribute. So if our speed attribute is 4, now we can move 4 zones. And again, we have to move before we take our action. And then we end. So it's the same thing as if when we're, it's the same thing as when we were on foot or in a pilot mode. We're just using our mech's stats. And obviously we have this extra component called our energy reserve. And obviously we can move multiple zones because, we're in a big zoom, zoom, zip, zip mech. We abstract the distance. Every 1x1 square or hex is called a zone, and it's not really clear how it is. It could be a whole city block. It could be meters. It really kind of depends up to you. Unlike their pilots, Mecha can move farther than a single zone every turn, and Mecha weapons can strike at targets in zones reaching far beyond the one they're standing in. Units can provide cover for one another. This means weapons may not target through zones occupied by enemies to reach other enemies behind them. Oh, okay. So flat out, you cannot shoot at enemies that you may not target through zones occupied by enemies to reach enemies in a different zone behind them. Fun story. In more, there's a Warhammer a skirmish game called Mordheim, which I think it's not in print anymore, but it's a really cool little miniature. It's square or hex. I think they want you to use hex, but they understand, that it might be. Most people don't have access to hexes these days. But in Mordheim, I'm trying to remember the exact rule. But if you had a ranged weapon, it's a skirmish miniature game, like 8 to 12 minis per side. And you're fighting in this you're fighting in this abandoned ruins of a city that got hit by a meteorite. And the meteorite's shards are magical chaos stone that's worth a lot of money. And your war bands are combing through the wreckage of the destroyed city to look for it. And you're fighting off other war bands. Anyways, in the game, by default, you have to target with a ranged weapon the closest target. And the idea that the game says is that basically, if there's a guy with a sword, 4 or 5 feet away from you coming at you, and then there's another guy 12 feet, 20, 30 feet away behind a barrel, I think you either can't shoot at him or you have to make a check. You have to make a leadership test or a nerves check or, to steel yourself to be able to just not instinctively shoot the target that is the closest to you. And I always thought that was a really cool rule, especially because I think that there were upgrades that certain characters could get, like the sniper upgrade, which I think let you basically, as long as you had cover, you could target whoever you wanted with a range attack, which I thought was really cool. But I always thought that was a really cool rule. And I kind of like this rule because it means you can actually provide your allies with cover, which is pretty cool. And it's not just you get a +1 to your AC. No, it's they can't shoot you. So then we have all the rules for attacking in your mech, and it looks like it's pretty much the same as before. You can assist, you can aim, you can attack, you can do suppressing fire. Yes, Necromunda came first, Festurian. That is true. Mordheim was adapted from Necromunda. So actually Necromunda is the original, the precursor. I've actually never played Necromunda, although I believe miniwargaming.com is starting up a Necromunda campaign, narrative campaign. I think you have to join their vault or their Patreon or whatever to get access to it. And I was thinking about signing up for it just because I thought it would be really cool. Those guys do such a great job with their terrain and their minis and their rules. And and the quality of their production is so good, and it would just be so fun to watch. Necromunda games. What I would like to see. This is a side tangent. If anybody knows this, like, it'd be cool if they did like the full 3-hour battle, and then if they did like a, or whatever, 2-hour battle, whatever, and then they did like a 25 minute edited version where, I don't have to sit there and literally watch them play a war game for 2-3 hours, and just really focus on like, the important bits. All right. We have a new thing that we can do with mechs, which is engage them in a duel, and we get locked into a duel. Okay. We can boost and move really fast. We can maneuver and basically, launch dummy balloons or launch behind hard cover, release some chaff, and basically we can increase our AC for a turn. We can also still delay. We can disengage to escape a duel, and other things like that. All right. Mech have a defense equal to their guard value plus 5. Mech have 4 levels of threshold. All damage that reduces the defender's threshold down 1 level will maim one of your areas, disabling any weapons and upgrades there. The affected area is dependent on the total amount of damage that was dealt. An odd damage total will maim an area of the defender's choice. Interesting. An even damage total will maim an area of the attacker's choice. All right. Areas that have already been maimed cannot be chosen twice. When the damage that causes a maim is inflicted by the environment, then the unit chooses. However, like any good heroic protagonist, characters will fight more fiercely the closer they are to defeat. The first time that a PC loses an individual level of threshold during an operation, they gain a genre point, which is like your supercharged hero point. This applies to the first 3 levels, not the 4th. If you lose the 4th level, you are out. If you lose all 4 levels and all of your non-core areas are maimed, it is defeated and the core ejects. So, and if it comes down to it and you want to deal like individuals versus mechs do double damage against pilot scale targets. Characters do half damage against mechs targets, and death blows have no effects on mecha, as you see. As you can see, the only hope for characters lies in not getting hit at all, but this will be very difficult. Basically, get in a mech and fight. Unfortunate Pumpkin says, I love this rule. Getting stronger as you're dying should be a mechanic in every game with combat. It should certainly be, Pumpkin, a mechanic in every game with combat that purports to be cinematic, or, because again, that's not how real life works, right? In real life, when you get fucked up, you don't fight as well. So if you're a very hardcore simulationist game, sure, no, Death Spiral. But if you're anything that's trying to be cinematic or trying to, have fun over realism, your anime coded brain, right? Anything that is like, cinematic and over the top and that kind of stuff. I agree with you, Pumpkin. I completely agree with you. Dig deep, find the strength, again, which is what happens in movies, right? In movies, right, when characters are at their most beat up, that's when they beat the bad guy. That doesn't even make sense. That's when you should be completely tapped out, Captain America is completely trashed. His weapons are broken. He's battered, bruised, beaten, but that's when he beats the bad guy, not when he was fresh. It doesn't even make any sense. Osul says, simulationist player here is cringing. Yeah, well, yeah, because, again, in real life, you get, think about like Hackmaster, right? In Hackmaster, if you take damage, you have to make a check. You drop to the ground and writhe in pain. Like, you have all your hit points, but you're like, no, you're just fucked up. You got hit hard, and now you're basically out of the fight. That's real life. Yeah, the Drustiel's victory system is really cool. I'm a big fan of it. It's very gamist. It's very cinematic. But, as the going gets tough, right, the tough get going. That's basically that mechanic in a nutshell. So the core is your mech's critical system, right, where, like the center of your pilot, including the pilot there. Cores have no upgrades. They have no weapons. After the core's threshold hits 0, spillover damage hits the pilot. The mechanical purpose of the core is to act as a sort of 5th level of threshold that protects the pilot from harm until it is destroyed, at which time the double damage from mechs and you'll probably die if you attacked. Grunt Mecha always fail to eject, and their pilots explode violently with their robots. Okay. They literally have included how do you want to do this as a rule in their game. Whenever the GM confirms that a PC has defeated an NPC, the owners of the PC has the right to narrate a dramatic finish. For what it's worth, I actually hate that rule. I think I know it's like a critical roleism, but the how do you want to do this to me is very weird and meaningless, because it's like you're finally giving your player narrative agency when it doesn't matter. It's very strange. But yeah, so they give you some examples of what might happen here. But like, for example, if you have a melee weapon and you deal more than 31 damage, or you hit a 31 or higher with a might test, and you do more than 10 points of damage with your overkill, your super robot burns bright red with a fiery battle aura, pouring your soul into a mighty battle cry. You punch the enemy into a mountain so hard that it makes the mountain partially collapse, if not outright implode on top of them, right? So, anime. Of course your mech is soul powered. So, all right, let's say if you're using a ranged attack, you bet everything on your beam cannon, bypassing all limiters and overloading your reactor to fire a single all or nothing shot. The beam is so massive, it is as wide and as tall as your mech, and so powerful it goes over the horizon and makes random civilians far away from the battlefield think that they saw a shooting star across the sky. All right. So then we have information about terrain and the terrain effects on rolls and stuff like that. And then finally, after all the antagonist NPCs are defeated or they've retreated, the operation is over. There can also be other objectives, such as, besides the destruction of all GMs, up to the GM. PCs can also end a mission on their own by retreating through Live Another Day or boosting away until you reach the edge of the battlefield. Interesting. Hey, Duncan, thank you so much.
Duncan DT tipped $10. Mech Week hype.
So that's kind of cool. Thank you, Duncan, by the way. Mech Week. Yeah, we 3 for 3, buddy. We appreciate it. And again, like I said, I got to go to PAX, but when I come back, we'll do some real mech games. We'll do some Battletech. I don't even know. We'll do some real mech games. Now, see this. This is a mech, you know. Look at that bad boy. That is a mech. That is an architectural schematic. Okay, that's a piece of gear. That's a piece of hardware. Okay. All right. PCs can also end a mission on their own by reaching. I thought this is interesting. You can boost, which is where you double move. And if you reach the edge of the battlefield, your character escapes. That's kind of a cool. I mean, that's kind of a neat way. That's very war gamey, but I kind of like it a lot. Thanks to Live Another Day, escaping alive from a losing fight is trivial, and it's up to each PC to decide between retreating or fighting to the very end. However, the same goes for any NPCs with GP, meaning that they can survive if the GM would wish. All right. And then they get an example of an operation round where you're fighting with mechs. Hey, Elaine, thank you so much for your donation. I'm waiting for a Carapace to deliver a solo mech game. Oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't know that one. Carapace, is that the name of the game? I must be looking at a different game. Carapace says it is a solo ant colony game. So I'm assuming that's not what you're talking about. Oh, wait, is this it? A game of memory and ruin? Yep, it must be it. Carapace, a game of memory and ruin, is a solo war game about sacred machines, fractured memory, and what we choose to become after being reborn in the fire. Cool. So very cool. All right. So, let's take a look at how we make a character. We get 100 CP. Remember, when we get XP, it gets divided between upgrades for us, our pilot, and upgrades for our mech. So points spent on our character are called CP. Points spent on our mech are called MP. And we get both in the same ratio, right? So if we get 10 XP, we gain 10 CP and 10 MP. We have 100 character points. So as I said before, this feels very much like Mutants and Masterminds. For those of you not aware, the way Mutants and Masterminds works is everything in the game is effects-based. You buy it all a la carte. The whole game is a la carte. And usually in a Mutants and Masterminds game, you start with 150 power points, and you use those power points to buy everything. You use them to buy your stats. You use them to buy your skills. Use them to buy your special powers. And everything is built, again, using a modular system. So like the damage power might be 1 point per rank. And you could take up to 10 ranks of damage. That would cost 10 points. But if you want to make it ranged damage, then it costs 2 points per rank. So ranged damage at rank 10 would be 20 points. AoE costs 2 points per rank. So if you want to make it ranged AoE, it would be 4 points per rank. So a rank 10 AoE damage ability would be 40 points, and so on and so forth. So we use this to buy attributes, skills, and traits. We can also, then we think about our genre, themes, and powers. We make some adjustments for our power level. Basically, if the GM starts us at a higher power level, we get bonus points. And then we write down our finishing touches. First, we start with our character concept. What are we? It's what Fabula Ultima would call the identity, right? Don't just be like, I'm a pilot. No, you are, the schoolgirl with 3 PhDs who keeps making puns and cackling madly. That's way better, than a concept of a genius, or just genius or schoolgirl. But then this is too specific. Instead, go with eccentric girl genius. And I've said this before when we've talked about Fabula Ultima. I said, try to include 2 or 3 adjectives, adverbs, or, proper nouns, right? Not just an assassin, but say, the disgraced imperial assassin, right? That's a really cool way to describe it, Again, 2 to 3 adjectives or nouns, are all really you need for most character concepts. And I think that gives you enough to be somewhat descriptive, but also not so hyper specific, which is pretty cool. There you go. Everything from emotionless child soldier, dutiful Western samurai, salary man just doing his job, eccentric girl genius, pink-haired cat girl, androgynous young prodigy. We're just check mark, check mark, check mark. So then we spend all of our points. And again, this is where, if you've ever played Mutants and Masterminds, you either love it or hate it. This is builder's dream, because you can just buy anything you want. So what do you want your attributes to be? Remember, we have the 6 attributes. Well, if you want your might to be 4, or your fitness to be 4, it costs 10 points. If you want your fitness to be 10, it costs 55 points. You have 100, go wild, go nuts. Okay? So first you have to buy all your attributes. Then you buy all your skills. Skills can be generalist or specialist. A generalist skill costs you 10. A specialist skill costs you 5. Skills are simple. When you make a test that belongs to one of your skills, you get an advantage to a test. Generalist skills apply to any situation in which the skill could be used, while specialist skills only apply to a single topic or subject within that skills. So There you go. We've got athletics, combat, deception, craftsmanship, right? So for an example, if you want to be trained in athletics, it costs 10 points. If you want to be trained in football, it costs 5 points. And you can always upgrade your specialist to generic for 5 points later in the game. Now, I think that those specializations are a bit too specialized for my taste, but, you know, it is what it is. So we've got deception, combat, craftsmanship, diplomacy, electronics, humanities, finesse, investigation, medicine, science, presence, stealth, vehicles, survival, yada, yada, yada. So, again, you could buy any or all of these, however many points you want to spend. Miracle skills are more or less superpowers. They can range from ESP to mutant powers to nanomachines powered by your blood. With these, you can change your environment, the minds of others, subtle pull of gravity, the brutality of pyrokinesis. Miracles have a side effect. Miracles work like skills do. However, using a miracle will deal damage to your plot armor by 1 plus another point for each multiple of 5. So if the higher skill, the higher the dice roll is when you use a miracle skill, the more plot armor damage you take. So if you roll really well, you will take damage. Now remember, plot armor is why they call it plot armor. They don't even want you, they said it could be physical, it could be mental, right? It could be fear, it could be stress, it could be strife. It doesn't matter. It is an abstract concept of you're being worn down, right? And your plot armor is being depleted until you take some sort of narrative consequence. That's why they're calling it plot armor. They don't even want to mess around with the word hit point because people automatically start thinking about blood, guts, and bone when people say hit point. So plot armor is so to the point. So obviously, you know, this is 11 from, you know, Stranger Things using her psychic power, right? The nosebleed starts to happen, right? The guy starts getting pounding headaches or whatever, you know. Miracles cost 10 points for specialization and 20 points if you want the generic mastery of a skill. So we've got electricity, force, fortune, matter, life, phantasm, phasing, portal, allowing you to rip wormholes in space-time, creating oval-shaped glowing windows, probing, sight, temperature, somatics. Somatics strengthen your body with superhuman power for a few moments. With it, you can punch holes into concrete, outrun vehicles, and shoot targets blind. There you go. The use of somatics adds an advantage to any fitness test and makes it a miracle test. It does not take an action to activate. So there you go. Yes, so you're a Jedi mech pilot, Cinnabos. That's correct. Okay, traits look like they cost a variable number of points. Most of them look like they are 5, but these are basically feats. And you could buy any of these. You could buy all of these. You could buy that you're an animal person. You could buy that you're an assassin, better lucky than good, danger instinct, ingenious, intimidating, jaded, polyglot, gumshoe, etc., etc., etc. And yes, since at the beginning of the game, you have 100 points to spend. So you could buy skills, miracle skills, your attributes, these traits. And this is just for your pilot. We also have to still do this for your mech. Oh, look at this. If you take the psychic power trait, that damage that you take when you use your miracle skills gets divided by half. So that's pretty cool. So if you really do want to be the psychic badass. So this is, by the way, extremely like Eminem. Yes, Unfortunate Pumpkin. And one of the things that's important about Eminem, it is what we call an effects-based game. We don't like, so in Mutants and Masterminds, we actually, the effect is called damage. There isn't a separate power for fire damage or electricity damage. It's just called damage. Now, as a player, you want to describe, right? You know, like if you might want to give it a tag or a trait. Like if you're a Cyclops, you're going to give yourself ranged damage, but you're going to give it the force descriptor. Now that force descriptor doesn't cost any points, but it does define within the fiction what your force beams are doing. However, your concussive blasts or whatever. However, from a mechanics perspective, it's just ranged damage. The fact that it does fire, the fact that it doesn't matter. Now, Mutants and Masterminds gets around this with alternate powers and using what's it called? Pushing? No, it's not called pushing. What's it called? Extra effort, so that you can use alternate powers. It's a whole separate thing. But one of these days we'll have to cover Mutants and Masterminds. But anyways, the point is, this is really fun. Like once. It's very hard for me to go back to Mutants and Masterminds because this kind of really, I mean, this is, like I said, this is a builder's paradise. I mean, because remember, you start with 100 points if you are starting at rank 0, right? Like you're basically a schlub. If you're faceless, nobody's. If your GM says, hey, we're going to start you guys off as, heroic members of the Galactic Alliance, okay? Now you start with 160 character points because it's 60 plus the 100 you start with. So now you have to spend 160 character points, but then you're also going to have to spend 160 mech points. It does take forever to build a character. And there's a ton of analysis paralysis. Pumpkin is hitting all of the right beats here in chat. Okay. Now, we talked before about these genre themes. These are how you get your GPs. All right. Genre themes or themes are the core of your character. Genre themes come in 3 kinds. Reasons are the PC's personal motivation. Typecasts are your role within the group, and banes are your fatal flaw. You will need one of each. So you basically, what is your motivation, right? What's your theme? What is your, what's your typecast? Literally using you're typecast as you're the stoic loner, you're the tank, right? And then banes are your fatal flaw. And not only does this give you, hints and clues of how to play your character and role play your character, but as those themes create problems or matter to the story, you're going to get genre points. Okay? And again, they're basically like fate aspects because they said the GM can even use genre themes to try and compel the PC to act in a certain way. At any times, the GM can offer a player a genre point in exchange for their PC taking a certain action related to their themes. By the way, this is very similar to Mutants and Masterminds and the way it uses its hero point system. Okay? This way, the GM can persuade the PCs into doing what is convenient for their plan or to roleplay in a way that the GM will think it is more interesting. While the PC gets to make more use of their themes, everybody wins. Part of the problem with Mutants and Masterminds, and I played Mutants and Masterminds with a lot of people. Some people I played with Smith, got it. They leaned into the genre tropes and they would stack up a massive thick pack of hero points by the end of a session because they leaned into the themes. They were like, yes, my character is basically Superman, except I'm from Ohio and I draw my power from Lake Erie instead of Earth's yellow sun. Yes, I get it. Oh no, it's Dr. Detroit and he is my hated foe and he has built an anti-Erie ray. Oh, of course he has. And Smith is like, yeah, sign me up. Give me those hero points. I want to stack it up. He's leaning into the tropes. But I also played Mutants and Masterminds with friends like Matt Holloway, Burl from our Rise of the Runelords campaign from many years ago. Well, Matt played role-playing games to win. So he never wanted to lean into any of the tropes. Why would I accept defeat? I don't care. I don't want to be defeated. I want to beat him right now. And so sometimes people really do struggle with this. Yeah. Anyways. So why are you adventuring? And this is almost like the theme from Fabula Ultima, right? It could be justice, knowledge, duty, your family, your ambition. You're looking to get rich, kid. I'm not in it for your revolution. Typecast themes. Are you the rookie? Are you the leader? Are you the jokester? Are you doing it because you're a mentor? Are you a disciple? Are you the cheerleader? Are you the loner? And then your bane is your Achilles heel, right? Your phobia, your addiction, your berserker rage, your soft-heartedness, your crushing financial debt, your depowering weakness. You have a nemesis, right? Basic genre 101, whether we're talking superheroes or anime mecha. It is basic stuff. And this is great. Jam says, oh, that's me with the crushing debt. All right. Now, why do we want these GPs? Well, we want the genre points so that we can use our genre powers. These are a big, now remember, so basically when we use, let's call it what they are. Genre themes are fate aspects, okay? And when our fate aspects potentially causes problems or are important, we are awarded with fate points, except they're called genre points. Now, what can we do with these genre points? We can use genre powers. They are fueled by genre points. These tilt the balance of the fight, such as improvising a new technique to overcome an enemy defense, a hidden shield that stopped what should have been a lethal blow, or a dramatic speech that keeps your allies fighting. Genre powers come in two types. Setup powers can only be used during your turn, before you take your action, and reaction powers can be used at any time. All genre powers require you to spend one of your genre points to activate them. Remember that you start each episode with a number of genre points equal to your power level. So again, the default power level is 0, so you don't start with any, but in my instance where I said, hey, you guys are heroic, you guys start with 2. All PCs have the 6 default genre powers. Plus, you can pick and choose a number of additional genre powers equal to your power level when you create your character. Okay? You can't take a power multiple times unless it is marked with a specialist trait, in which case you have to take multiple versions of that for each specialist choice. Okay, so the 6 generic ones that we all have access to is add a cutscene. Your attack stands out because you narrate it down to every detail, from how your bullets pierce the enemy's own in midair to the use of, this is how you use your, this is suggestions for how to make your genre powers really look awesome. 1, do a slow-mo bullet mode cutscene. 2, use ultimate technobabble, right? I reroute the primary and secondary systems, and I do a full power dump into the nano matrix core. Once they reach 150%, I dump all of the fuel thrusters into the primary ignition chamber, and I unleash an inferno cannon of ungodly power, right? Just technobabble it. 3, flashback. 4, the secret weapon. You did not wish for it to come to this, but it has, and now you must unveil the forbidden secrets of your mecha. A rousing speech, or a catchy, quippy one-liner. All right, so this is how you add style to your super ultimate power move, okay? Here are the default powers that everybody gets. These are powers every PC gets for free, and because they're some of the most useful, make sure you kind of keep these in mind. Knowledge is power. Choose one enemy. You learn all of that enemy's stats. Live another day. Effect, you automatically retreat from the battlefield. This prevents any damage that would have been dealt to you if it was used as a reaction to an attack. Mid-scene upgrade. Gain a new upgrade or weapon. You must pay its MP cost at the earliest opportunity as soon as this option ends. If you would never be able to make this purchase in the future for whatever reason, the GM may rule that you cannot use this. So basically, you can get your next power on layaway. You put it on credit. Now I'm curious, Beowulf, do you like this better than the other one where you had to spend the points or you lost it? This basically gives it to you for forever, for realsies. But basically you can buy it even in the middle of a fight, but you have to pay for it eventually the next time you actually get points to pay for it. You may only use this power once per episode arc, okay? And you must pay for what you bought at the soonest possible opportunity, including saving up for it if you have to. It wasn't ready, they said. Her gear had only launched to keep it away from enemy hands, and Charlotte was told to retreat instead of using the prototype weaponry and potentially losing the gear. She knew better, that it was not just her best option at the time, but possibly her only one. Charlie lifted the restrictions on her Fire Drake's twin shoulder cannons and launched 2 violent energy pillars at the enemy. Both enemy mechs melted down, same as the cannons themselves. Pumpkin says, this is so anime, it's perfect. Right, this is where you're like, this is where the person's like, I'm going to unleash the ultimate cannon. No, it's not ready. I've been working on it in secret. I didn't want anyone to know it. I told you, that power should not be tapped with. Well, I did, okay? I'm bringing the reactor online. No, you'll kill us all. There's no other choice. Get out of here. Get out of here. You know. All right. Not so fast. Force an enemy's test to be re-rolled with disadvantage. With 2 disadvantages. Synchro attack. Choose at least one willing ally and make a combo attack. So this is literally Daggerheart's tag team. You gain 2 advantages to your next offensive action for each ally that helps you out in this way. This uses up an action and a genre point from every other participant. Your allies skip their next actions. Units may only participate in 1 synchro attack per operation. That's per battle. Try again. You get a reroll. You get to reroll a check with advantage. And you can only use this power once per test. Now, those are the generic ones that everybody gets. But as you gain more XP, as you gain more power levels, you can choose new ones. So we've got things like Fight Smarter, Making a Parting Shot, I Don't Think So, This Is for My Friend. It's over. Whenever you deal damage to an enemy and they survive with 5 or less points of threshold left, you may activate this power to deal that enemy the remaining amount of threshold in damage. You son of a bitch.
Karumak tipped $30 for the meme. Battle Century reaches when?
Exactly. Battle Century reaches when? Well, the fact that this game is balanced around episode arcs and, well, no, because even it's kind of balanced around episode arcs, but the fact that we don't have this problem of you're supposed to fight 5 combats per mission, and each mission or each combat is 3 hours. And so it's going to take you a month. Pumpkin says, sheath katana, it's over. No, I like it. Rock chewed through his shotgun ammo while burning. So, he's just like, Rock chewed through his shotgun ammo while burning holes into the sweeper class machina. But just to be safe, he jammed the firearm inside the enemy's giant dome-like body and kept pulling the trigger until he was out of shells. Well, Beowulf, that's a great point. So again, I can't bring up chat and I apologize, but Beowulf says, I appreciate that you can make this as cheesy or as grounded as you want. And that's the thing about effects-based games. Mutants and Masterminds could be silly and wonky, or it could be really grim and gritty, because the game only cares about the mechanics. It doesn't actually care about the fiction. So these are alternate powers. Then we have champion powers. These make you into an offensive and defensive powerhouse. My defense is impregnable. I believe in myself. I cannot be defeated. My style is impetuous. I have a signature weapon. I'm breaking through. And then we have trickster powers. Come at me, bro. The tactical approach. Gotta go fast. Take one for the team. I play my trump card. My pain is your pain. Then we have tactician powers. Don't give up. You are going down. I cannot let you do that. Mind over matter. You could do better than that. And then we have some miscellaneous ones. Hang in there. You or another pilot is about to be defeated through plot armor damage, or was already defeated. Restores their plot armor to full and continues fighting normally. You can only use this power once per operation. I'm a loose cannon. Take cover. Stake my life on it. I am your opponent. You are already dead. And so anyways, all these powers are things that you can upgrade as you continue to gain powers. Now, rush powers have an additional cost to them. They might cause you to skip a turn or skip the rest of your turn. Light speed assault, twin strike, restoration powers can heal people. Boost powers use your energy. Oh, never mind. I spoke too soon. Limit powers. Limit powers are merely acceptable at the beginning of an operation, but become some of the strongest powers. Oh, I love it. I love it. So the way they do limit, because this game has escalation, the limit powers basically are just okay, but they get stronger as the tension builds, right? The tension is the escalation, right? So on round 1, they're whatever. But on round 3 or 4 or 5, they're super powerful and super strong. I am helping. Jinxed. Pierce the heavens. All right. Your next offensive action this turn. Remember, this is a setup power. So on your turn, you go setup, move, main action. Your next offensive action this turn gains an advantage to its might test. If the tension bonus is 5 or higher, it also ignores the effects of all of their defenses. Right? So basically, if you use this power, you get advantage. But if you use this power late in the fight, you basically have such a powerful attack, it pierces through all their active defense. All right. And then we have character questionnaires like, are you cool? What's your scar like? What's your background like? What's your worst regret? What do you love? And then they have an example of somebody building a character. Here are some guidelines. Invest 50 to 75% into your attributes, have a couple of skills, have no more than 1 equipment trait, try to have some ranks in awareness, willpower, resources. Exceptions to the guideline do exist. Unlike their mechs, pilots are not guaranteed to necessarily see direct combat, right? So it may not make sense for you to invest a ton of combat skills into your pilot because most of the time you should be fighting in your mechs. Now that was chapter 2, building a character. Everything that we just did, we also have to do with our mechs. So we start with 100 mech points, or maybe 130 or 160. We get a concept. Then we have mecha points. Then we have genre powers. Wait, what? Again? Genre powers are part of the previous chapter, yes, but they have more of an impact on mecha than on pilots themselves. Now that you have your giant robot, you should take another look at them and make sure they work together well. So your genre powers stay the same, but they mostly affect you when you're in your mech. So first things first, mecha for everyone. Every character needs a mecha. The how and why of your mecha does not matter as the what. This is the definition of effects-based game. The how and why doesn't matter. It's the what, right? In Mutants and Masterminds, a character with ranged damage could be Cyclops, you could be Pyro, you could be Dazzler, you could be Jubilee. Ranged damage is also Archer Bow Guy. The game Mutants and Masterminds treats Cyclops' optic blast the same as it does someone shooting a bow and arrow. It is the damage effect at ranged. That's it. And so again, the how and why of the mecha doesn't matter as much as the what. This is not Mecha Simulator. This is about giant robots duking it out. In other words, mecha construction is more about the game's rules and mechanics, if you pardon the pun. You can make your mecha as distinctive as you want, but that won't matter. What matters is what powers did you buy. So here are some mecha concepts. Things like Mecha Knight riding a mecha horse, lame. Fire-breathing mecha dragon, lame. Windmill with arms and legs, lame. Although now I have like an idea for like a almost like a natural fantasy like cottage core mech game. Beowulf, traditionally, no. I mean, no. I mean, you don't have to let the fiction have weight. But it's kind of weird, basically. Because I don't know how this game does it, but in Mutants and Masterminds, the way that you have the fiction have weight is through mechanics. So just like with our character, we buy attributes with our mechs. Except now, remember, we have different stats. We have might, guard, threshold. Guard is our defense. Threshold is our HP, basically. Our energy is how much power we have. Systems is all of our support abilities. Speed is how fast, how many zones we can move. It's also our initiative. And might is used to attack, whether it's missiles, beam sabers, or laser cannons. Anything that's direct uses might. Areas. Upgrades and weapons of mechs are very similar to skills and traits of pilots, but there's one exception. Upgrades and weapons have to be allocated to one of your unit's external areas: the torso, the arms, the head, or the legs. If that area is maimed or blown up because of damage, any upgrades or weapons will stop working for the rest of that fight. Okay? There's also a fifth area, which is called the core, which is different because the core is internal and cannot be maimed. Remember, if the core gets blown up, you're dead, basically. I mean, narratively, you'll probably escape, but you know, if your core is destroyed, you're done so. All right. So we have the core. This is the cockpit of the mecha, functioning as the brain and heart of the mechanical body. Many of the most powerful upgrades can only be allocated to the core, but no weapons. Head is the thematic secondary core. Utility weapons, sensors, dramas, but it's also a good location for cool but impractical weapons like eye beams or mouth flamethrowers. Torso is the bulk of the mech's defensive upgrades like force fields or reactive evasive thrusters. Certain weapons can be here, such as chest mounted or shoulder mounted. Arms, mecha needs arms to do stuff. Although weapons can be equipped anywhere, the arms are the one place where some of them make the most sense. Legs are the unsung heroes of mobility without the prestige. Many veterans favor them to carry caches of ammo or emergency supplies while mounting an extra missile launcher inside their feet or drill on their knee just in case. Also, some weapons or systems are separate and basically just go on their own. And here's the way an upgrade works. So it's kind of just like traits. All upgrades will be marked as internal, external, or separate. If it's internal, it gets upgraded. It goes to our core. If it's external, we have to allocate it to one of our areas. So early warning systems, defensive technician, commander type mech. You have a special neural interface for the manipulation of traps on the battlefield and the management of gears directly under your command. At the beginning of your turn, you may spend 1 energy to use a single support upgrade you own without having to spend an action because of your special neural interface for helping direct other gears. Portal generators, artillery frames, power converters, stealth field, integrated weapons, experimental reactor, and these are all the internal upgrades. Lots of stuff. Then we have our active defenses. These, so the first group here, by the way, were what were they called? The general upgrades. They were just general. All right. The next is the beast. The next is active defenses. These give your unit a chance to evade or shrug off attacks that would have otherwise hurt them. Only one active defense may be used at a time. So we have things like absorbing armor, reactive boosters, reflecting barriers, repulsion fields, a learning AI computer. This self-learning AI compensates for the wear and tear of battle by looking for openings in the attack patterns of the enemy and moving the gear on its own. It's like when Iron Man is fighting Bucky and Steve Rogers in Captain America Civil War, and he tells his AI Friday to analyze their fight patterns so that he can actually fight them back because there's just no way he can do it on his own. I thought that was a cool scene. Shielding auras, electronic cloaking systems. Restoration upgrades allow your unit to support others with quick repairs, handing off ammunition, or charging them up. Resupply, reload, jury rig, regenerator. Mobility upgrades enhance, well, your mobility. Support upgrades. Support fire, assisted targeting, overcharge. Increase the energy available to yourself or an ally by 4 during their next turn. Multiple overcharges on the same unit do not stack. The Overcharger looks like a lightning gun that would make Tesla proud, but actually shoots a stream of nanobots carrying a multitude of gravigium crystals. These crystals will essentially overclock a gear temporarily, making it run at 200% power for a brief period of time. Extra areas don't benefit your units directly, but are instead extra upgrades, such as an expansion pack or secret equipment cache. There we go. Now there's the mech for the game I want to play. You can also buy alternate forms so that you can, become a transformer. And of course, the combination upgrade line lets you go full Megazord or Voltron, where you can combine your mechs and create one super mega mech, including the invincible super combination. I mean, of course, it wouldn't be mech if it wasn't that way. Most mech are assumed to be bipedal humanoids that are somewhat like giant suits of powered armor. However, with features, you can upgrade things like flying, power suit. You can dock with another ally. You can have an unstable reactor, basically become a weird type of mech. Ooh, it wouldn't be a point-buy game and full of point-buy pixel bitching if you couldn't buy flaws to gain MP. This is how you know your game is cooked, because this is where the min-maxers and the builders are going to sit there and pixel bitch out of every design flaw that they can and try to, maximize. This is like the min-maxer's dream. When you can take flaws. And then, of course, there's the weapons. Now, in this case, the weapons, instead of giving us a big, huge, long list of weapons, they are basically generic types. And, like you can see here, there are blast weapons, there's burst weapons, there's beam weapons, there's shooting weapons, there's melee weapons. So we have melee, which have the advantage they could be used in a duel. Shooting have a minimum range of 0 and a maximum range of 5. Beam weapons cost energy. Blast weapons can target multiple zones. Burst weapons have a long and wide reach. They target individual zone and target everyone around you. Crippling weapons damage their systems as well as cause damage. Line weapons target a line of zones. Long range can go much further than 5 zones, adding an additional 5 zones. One-shot weapons can only be used once per fight. Slow weapons can only be fired once every other turn. Overheating weapons, if you roll odd with it, you take damage. Unreliable weapon is if you keep a die roll that is an odd weapon number, you lose the benefit of the tension value to this test. All right, and then there's also drones or remote weapons. So we got a bunch of different weapons here. Arm weapons, assassin blade, boosted lances, chain blades, great crusher. And they basically just have all those, like the great crusher is crippling long range one-shot blast, a giant hammer filled with explosives that self-destructs on impact. There's certainly smarter weapons out there, but not many with this sheer brutality. These are all just the melee weapons. Then we have all the shooting weapons, from lockdown missiles, macrowave cannons, assault rifles, hyper launchers, rail bazookas, sniper rifles, resonance cannons. Then we have the beam weapons, beam saber, beam rifle, graviton 1, point singularity projector, gravity knuckles, lux cannons, oblivion busters, reactor overdrive. Then we can make power level adjustments to our character sheet and finally fill out the mech sheet. I can accept this mech is looking pretty cool. It's very Gundam-like, but I can accept it. I accept it. And so then there's an example of them building the mech. And then we get into how you actually run the game, but I don't necessarily know what we need to do it. I mean, there's rule 0, rolling with the punches, say yes or roll the dice, basic stuff that we've seen again and again and again. How to play NPCs, how to set a goal for a session. They even give an example of here, how long should your campaign be? So you could have the 6-episode OVA miniseries. You could have the 12-episode quarter-year season. You could have the 24 episode half year season or the 48 episode year long season. By the way, I appreciate their optimism that they think that in a 52 week year that you are going to get 48, that they are going to get 48 sessions. That means that they think that they are only going to miss one session a season. That is very optimistic. Divvy these episodes up into arcs. Somewhere between 2 to 5 episodes per arc works best, while 7 to 10 episodes per arc is better for a longer one. And then you can distribute your subplots and go from there. Then we talk about sandboxing play, different types of NPCs, allies, hangouts, dungeons. TAS Agent, I'm right there with you, buddy. We used to play 2 or 3 times a week when I was in like high school or just out of college. They talk about creating structure, bad guy, master plan, themes, the flow of episodes, and all that other stuff. Then they get into the detail of how do you build a battlefield, create objectives, blah, blah, blah. All right. So then they talk about house rules that they have in the game. If you want to add magic and fantasy to your game, if you want to add factions management to your game, there's not a whole lot of rules there, but there's also a hardcore mode. Oh, it adds body horror to the game. Oh, didn't think about that, but all right. Anyways, bunch of optional rules here at the end of the game. Then they have information about their setting. And then copying the homework. So they do have some sort of, these are NPC pre-made builds. No, they do not have any pre-made mechs. But these look like NPCs. So they're called grunts. So you have a knight grunt, a archer grunt, a laser grunt, a hybrid grunt, a defender grunt, a barrage grunt, a buffer grunt, a debuffer grunt, right? So basically 4th edition, skirmisher grunt, blaster grunt, and then we get into rivals, which I guess are probably like elites, right? A duelist rival, a sniper rival, a beam spam rival, a bestial rival, artillery rival, a psycho rival, a controller rival, a director rival, and a shield rival, a component rival, a speedster boss, a tentacle boss, a mega particle boss, an exploder boss, a tempo boss. And this is very clearly like, it's basically like a phased boss fight type thing. Then we have Rogues Gallery. This contains PC and NPC builds. We have 4 pilots and 10 mecha for the PCs. So there you go. So here's an example of a power level 2 PC. They have 160 character points. These are their stats. These are their skills. These are their traits. And these are their genre powers. So this is all that a pilot has. And then they have their 3 themes, their reason, their typecast, and the Bane. And then here's another PC. This is Akishiro Kobayashi. A little bit more skilled, trait heavy. And again, their Bane is arrogant smartass. Here's Nilu Flores, the aforementioned cat person. And Charlotte Astellian. She's addicted to glow. Then they give us an example of some mechs. So here is the SDG-01. Here's the SDG-11, the Sword Drake. These are its mights. These are its upgrades and where they are assigned. So the core has the duelist model and the invincible alloy. The torso front has the custom defense and custom defense melee and shooting. The torso back has the rocket sword. The right arm has the whirlwind attack, and the left arm has the dueling blade. And that's it. That's all that a mech is. So here is another one, the Gundrake, the SDG 012, with a little bit more. There's some reflecting barriers, repulsion themes, rail bazooka, sniper arms, super heavy machine gun, and a sentry turret. That looks pretty cool. The Ring Drake, the Fire Drake. We got our first Drake that I think looks terrible. Polyspina. We're losing them. The first couple of mechs were really cool. I'm hating these other ones here. I think they're just trying to show that you can make them dumb and stupid if you want to. Oh, here's like the demon mech, the Fafnir, the Quetzalcoatl, the Stork class. That's just a fucking flying ship. Oh, this is interesting though. This is kind of interesting. It's a Stork class carrier. It says Operator's Guide player. A player who wants to be a battleship captain can play a Stork in combat instead of piloting a mech. While they're unarmed support units by default, they are purposely written. So, like, you can just literally not even be a mech. You're just like the support ship that like flies around and supports your allies. It doesn't even have it doesn't even have a weapon. That's actually kind of cool. The players come and just like dock with you for repairs. It's kind of funny. And then here are example NPCs using those templates that they had before. So they do have a bestiary, which is good. And then here is the pilot sheet, which, as we said before, is ghastly in its design. And then here's the mecha sheet, which is somehow also ghastly in its design. Like the fact that you have to assign things to the core, the head, the torso, the arms, the legs, others. Like, come on, give me some kind of mech outline, generic outline thing. You know, give a little bit of sizzle here. You know. It says to make it player driven, you have to add weapons, but I would just not. You know, I mean, I guess you could, but like, you know, it'd be funny if you didn't. And that's it. That's the whole game. Obviously, there's a ton of different little effects to look through, but it's not too bad. I mean, Mutants and Masterminds is even worse. Here's a way to generate random main weapons. Let's see. This is in the build. This is in the GM section. Melee, or is it all melee or shooting? All right. It's gonna be shooting. It is a boosted cyber hyper. I don't even know what I'm doing here. It's a boosted hybrid god frame. Okay, it didn't work out too well, but anyways, I mean, that's cool. I like random tables to generate cool sounding names. And again, a bunch of random stuff here to like add dimension to your characters, your NPCs. There's also a life path system in here. Like if you want to kind of go traveler, so you can generate random names, relationships, life path, right? Roll on the history table, roll on the mecha table, roll on the names table, roll on the quirks table to sort of, you know, kind of build a life path for your PC. I always like that. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it's Mutants and Masterminds and Mechs. It's M&M. I mean, again, I don't know that I saw a part in the game where they specifically called out influences, but the game was very clearly influenced, in my opinion, by Mutants and Masterminds, which is not a bad thing. You know, obviously there's other effects-based game. Pumpkin says, no, boosted hybrid god frame sounds right. Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if I was speaking or right, proper anime. Cheers, Darth Malicious. Have yourself a good night. Yeah, Cinnabus, you said it quite right. If you power game this, it's going to be a nightmare. If you have a theme in mind, it's pretty cool. You can match the mechanics to it easily. Exactly. That is what's cool about effects-based games. Again, very diehard simulationists have a real problem with it, because they want to use their mechanics as if it was real. That's not how it works in effects-based games. So what I mean is, when you have ranged damage power, that does damage at range. And you're like, cool, but I'm going to use it to cut through I'm going to use it to, because it's so hot, I'm going to use it to melt this concrete or melt this asphalt. No, it doesn't do that. I mean, it should in the fiction. It's true. And if it was a fiction first game, it absolutely should. But the way that effects-based games work doesn't work like that. Now, Mutants and Masterminds, like I said, gets around this by using the alternate power rules. But what it basically forces you to do is create a new power that actually does the thing that you want to have it do. So instead of it being range damage, you would turn your optic blast into a new power, which would be called like maybe like a drain toughness ability. And now it's usable on objects. And what it does is it drains the toughness from an object until the toughness is 0. And then you can do that. And Beowulf, actually in Mutants and Masterminds, you don't even have to spend a meta currency. You have to use what's called extra effort. Basically, it's like you push yourself, and it basically makes you fatigued. Now, hero points in Mutants and Masterminds lets you immediately heal from fatigue. So if you do have a meta currency, a hero point in Mutants and Masterminds, you can essentially do it for free. But even if you are out of meta currency, you can push yourself and use a little bit of extra effort, and you can create an alternate power on the fly. So Pumpkin, yeah, this game sort of has a similar thing with the genre points. Mutants and Masterminds is even more broad, admittedly. Mike T says, I just got here. Are we talking about how Fireball on PF2E can't set paper on fire? Quite right. Did I review Mutants and Masterminds? I never did. It's actually probably one of the games I've run the most in my life. I mean, obviously, like D&D, is at the top and path. But I have run, I don't know, 50, 60. I've probably run 60, 70, 80 sessions of Mutants and Masterminds between first edition, second edition, and third edition. And it was definitely not a first look, Beowulf. The problem with Mutants and Masterminds is I'm at the point in my life in my games where I don't care about the mechanics. Actually, I care about the fourth edition. Yeah, you're right. Fourth edition is on the first look list. Yeah, I have not looked at fourth edition. Do I think Mutants and Masterminds is the best superhero RPG? Yes and no. I mean, you can mechanically express your character better than you can in any other game. But I just don't care. Mutants and Masterminds is fundamentally based off of the OGL, and it's based off of D20. And like, I don't care about like counting squares when I'm doing superheroes. I don't care about the range of Cyclops' optic blast. I don't care about like, what is the radius of Jean Grey's telekinetic blast, right? I don't want to calculate cone AoE templates. I don't want to calculate cone AoE templates in any game nowadays, but I definitely don't want to use it. I definitely don't want to do it for superheroes. Now, luckily, my group of players, again, were awesome, and none of them min-maxed, and we all had a lot of fun with it. And it was a lot of great fun. So we had some absolutely amazing campaigns. We built our own entire universe called the LEL verse. We had a wiki. One of my players paid an artist to create a theme song. We used to have, arguably one of my buddy's children is named after one of his characters from Mutants and Masterminds. So, and again, our Mutants and Masterminds games were, we were called the Lake Erie League. At one point, me and my friends all had LEL bumper stickers that like went on the back of our things that said LEL. Our first campaign consisted of Densis, who was Magneto but with gravity, Captain Ohio, who was Superman but drew his power from Lake Erie, and Mr. Canada, who was the friendly Arctic spirit of the North. So that was our first campaign. Was Captain Ohio, Mr. Canada, and and Densis. Our second campaign featured Joe Armstrong, the American Ninja, Dr. Awesome, Avalanche, whose, by the way, powers had nothing to do with Avalanche. That was Matt's character. And Psionica, who was only there for a few sessions. Then in the third season, we had Metamorphic, Jet Guy, the Lake Erie Monster, aka Lem, the Lake Erie Monster, and Shadow Fang, which was Tim's first character in Mutants and Masterminds. Actually, Jet Guy was George's first character in our Mutants and Masterminds, and Shadow Fang, who was a Batman clone, but with wolves instead of bats. And that one took place in space on an interdimensional, interplanetary spaceship called the Nexus, which came from a side episode from our first campaign where Captain Ohio took 2 nuclear weapons into a black hole to forestall a disaster, and Aaron lost his character for a couple sessions because his character was lost across dimensional space. And so he made a new character called Captain Nathan Reynolds. It was based off of Nathan Fillion plus Malcolm Reynolds. So his character's name was Nathan Reynolds. And so he was basically Mal from Firefly, but he was Captain Nathan Reynolds, and he was the pilot of the Starship Nexus. And he was from the Lake Erie League from like 1,000 years in the future. And he's like, I've come back to you now at the turn of the tide. We have to go change things. So Metamorphic, actually, Nutrimancer, in the first campaign, the Earth was invaded by a group of shape-changing aliens called the Zelaxians. And the Zelaxians were kind of like the Skrulls in that they could shape change. And Metamorphic was a half-human, half-Zelaxian hybrid. I think he was like created by the government as like an experiment. And so Metamorphic was kind of a shape changer / Mr. Fantastic character in that he could shapeshift, but not like he couldn't turn into like a bird or anything like that, but like he could change what he looked like and stuff like that. And then he kind of had like flexible arms, and, you know, he had like elastic skin capabilities. Most of our games were kind of tongue in cheek. They were very jokey. Obvious is quoting one of the most famous quotes of all times from one of our campaigns. This was a mission. I believe it was on Canadar Prime. It turns out in our universe, all Canadians were actually aliens. Well, they're here now, but their DNA is not from America, from the Earth. Canadians actually came from a planet called Canadar Prime, and source of canadium, not Canadian, canadium. Canadium is basically what makes time travel and space interdimensional time travel possible, is canadium crystals. And so they go to Canadar Prime because they need a new canadium crystal core for the Nexus, which is their space traveling interdimensional ship. And on Canadar Prime, they have to launch this mission to acquire it, and they're like syncing up beforehand. And he's like, "Okay, everybody." And again, these are like futuristic superheroes, but they're like, "Let's synchronize watches." And Tim, who plays Shadow Fang, who is like the Batman character with Wolf, goes, "My watch is always synchronized." And we all just started dying of laughter because it made absolutely no sense. How can your watch always be synchronized? But it made total sense for this Batman-esque character. And then Shadow Fang's rival was an interstellar space pirate named Laser Wolf, which was a joke from a really bad B-movie science movie called Laser Mission. But he was called Laser Wolf, and Laser Wolf was there to steal the Canadium. And so there was this kind of like moment of like, you know, who's going to get the Canadium? And Laser Wolf said, "There's only one way that we could settle this." And then George, obvious in the chat, being a troll, said, "With a game of basketball," which was a meta joke, I think, to the Dave Chappelle Prince basketball skit. And he goes, yes, basketball. And so instead of having an epic drawn out fight, they instead played Space Jam. And it was Laser Wolf and the Revolution against the Lake Erie League. And, you know, it was them being superheroes, but in a basketball game. Oh, it wasn't from my end. It was from your end. Okay, it was me who said it was a game of basketball. I thought it came from you, George, because you're the Jet Guy. His magical power, by the way, is Jet Guy had a pair of magic LeBrons, some tennis shoes that gave him the ability to control air and wind. He was also the pilot of Shadow Fang's, Shadow Fang was the secret, who is the secret identity was Wayne Clark, who ran Clark Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate. So Wayne Clark was Tim's alter identity, and Jet Guy worked for Wayne Clark, but his secret identity was as Shadow Fang. Batman, but with wolves, because Tim likes wolves and has a wolf tattoo on his chest. So anyways, most of our games were basically meta jokes. So do I know Mutants and Masterminds? Yes. Was anything about our Mutants and Masterminds game cool because of Mutants and Masterminds? No. Absolutely not. Mutants and Masterminds was just the system that we used, and I don't particularly think anyone really loved the system. My buddy Ross liked to sit at home and make characters just because he enjoyed the process, but he wasn't like a min-maxer by any stretch of the imagination. But mostly, people just, we just liked, being funny and telling jokes and, kind of leaning into the genre tropes. So I personally think that there are better games to do that. My favorite kind of annoyance, Thaddeus. Thank you.
Thaddeus tipped $3. That incomplete tip goal is annoying.
Thank you, Thaddeus. There you go. Support for Mech Week is complete. And that means as we wrap up with Battle Century G, when I get back from PAX, we will do a look at Battletech. This isn't actually the RPG. This is just a Battletech book. I'm led to understand that there are multiple Battletech RPGs. There's apparently Battletech, the role-playing game. There is A Time for War and Mech Warrior Destiny. So apparently there are several. So your guys' guess is as good as mine. So this is Battletech, A Time of War, the Battletech RPG. And then apparently there is Mech Warrior Destiny. So this is the new one. It is a new way to dive into the action-packed Battletech universe based on the easy-to-learn Q system. It is a narrative-focused role-playing experience that has all you need to grab some equipment, load a sidearm, strap into a mech, a fighter, or tank to fight for what you believe in, be it honor, glory, or the almighty C-Bill. So it looks like Mech Warrior Destiny also includes rules for incorporating Total Warfare, Total Warfare, and Alpha Strike games. So it looks like this is the more light version, and it looks like the other one is a bit more crunchy. So got it. Obvious, have you looked at either of these games? Well, I generally think that Catalyst Game Labs has done a terrible job with everything that they've ever done. So there's that. We used A Time for War in character creation in a few campaigns. All right. Well, they're both the same price, so I'll probably just let got it. Well, we'll see. We'll see which ones we look at. Let's see. Destiny has 4.x stars on 30 votes, and Time for War has 4.x stars with 75 votes. So 30 and 75. So they're pretty much about the same. Go kill yourself, Beowulf. Go kill yourself. Both. Well, that's gonna do it for me. This was kind of cool. I mean, you know, I thought I was gonna hate Tenra Bancho Zero. Didn't. I thought this game was gonna be kind of just like really lame and super hyper crunchy. And while it does have all of the nitty grittiness, the fiddliness of a Mutants and Masterminds build, fundamentally, I can't hate on something that is basically Mutants and Masterminds. I should point out, by the way, that you could also build very easily. You could build mechs in the Mutants and Masterminds framework. In fact, there were a bunch of Mutants and Masterminds. Let me see if I can bring these up. What was it called? Mutants and Masterminds. Swords. Mutants and Masterminds. Swords and Sorcery, I think is what it was called. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, cool. Wizards. Sorry, it's called Warriors and Warlocks. Not quite. I wasn't quite right. So Warriors and Warlocks is a Mutants and Mastermind supplement that basically just uses the exact same rules that you normally use to make superheroes, and you make Conan the Barbarian or mages or wizards or rogues because it's an effects-based system. So it doesn't actually matter what you're doing with the effects. And this is a really good book. In fact, and now granted, like you can make it, and by the way, you could make it lower power level. Like you could make your characters PL4 or 5, in which case they're much, more street level, or you could make them PL10, in which case they're going to be like D&D characters, and they're going to be able to capable of, doing all sorts of crazy wonky shit. So, so anyway, so Warriors and Warlocks is Mutants and Masterminds for D&D. But what I'm saying is there's nothing in here that really actually changes. Like I said, it uses the same damage power that Mutants and Masterminds use. It calls it melee damage, and you call it your broadsword, and it fundamentally is the same thing. A broadsword is just melee damage, right? There was another one that they did back in 2nd edition, and I don't know if I can search by 2nd edition or not, because this is all 3rd edition and 4th edition stuff. But they did another one that was like a theme book. I'm trying to remember what it was from 2nd edition. Now these are 1st edition books. I don't remember what it was called, but I think there was another one that was for sci-fi. I thought. I could be wrong, but anyways, there was definitely the Swords and Sorceries one. But cool stuff. I have never played Hero. I've been told it's not, I don't want to say terrible, but it's nitty gritty to a level that I have no desire to play. So I've never played Hero, and I've never played Champions. I had played a little bit of Face Rip in the 90s. At some point, I don't know when, I got a Face Rip Marvel. I got a Marvel Superheroes box set, and I had Face Rip. And then they made a Marvel superhero game using the Saga system, which is the cards that came out for Dragonlance right in the late 90s, which also looked pretty cool. And we played that a little bit. But then we kind of were off superheroes. And I don't remember how we got to Mutants and Masterminds, but we found it fairly early in the D20 life cycle. I think Mutants and Masterminds 1st edition might have come out like 2002. I'm not sure when it came out. Something around that time. And it doesn't say. But yeah, 2002. Yeah. And I had bought it, and we kind of like messed around with it, and we thought it was really cool. But by the time that we had started to get interested in it, like second edition had already come out. So we played the crap out of second edition. So basically I've played Face Rip. I've played Marvel Saga. I've played Mutants and Masterminds first, second, and third edition. I've played Strands of Fate, which is a fate-based superhero game. And I've played Icons, which is also by Steve Kenson, which I think is actually a really cool game. Very, very low complexity. Icons is really, really low complexity. And that might be it. I think that's all I had. I think that's all. That's all. Only superhero games that I've played. But yeah, I mean, maybe we'll do some superhero stuff here in the future. And again, Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition is on a thing. And unfortunately, I've been led to believe it hasn't really changed that much. So, was Strands of Fate any good? It depends. Do you like really crunchy Fate? If you like really crunchy Fate, and I mean like old Fate, like before Fate Court came out, right? Because Strands of Fate, I think, is based off of like Fate 2 or something. I don't think it's based off of Fate 1. I think like Legends of Anglaire and like Spirit of the Century might have been based off of Fate 1. But Strands of Fate was complex. I'll say that. Overall, Beowulf, no, my group did not like Fate. They didn't like Fate. They didn't like Strands of Fate, I should say. But they thought it was too powerful, and the way some people really they hated how many aspects you had. You had so many aspects in Strands of Fate. You have so many aspects in Strands of Fate. Again, and they were like, "This is all. Why do I have all this stuff on my character sheet?" It was too much. Again, it's like with you going, "Oh, 7 attributes, 9 attributes is best. It's good if my skill. It's good if my character sheet has 50 skills." I'm so opposite of that. And certainly my group is very opposite of that as well too. Yeah. So I am going to be in PAX this week. Don't know if I'm going to hop online or not. I'm going to try to actually, enjoy myself, play some games and all this other stuff. It's only 3 days, so I'm flying out tomorrow, hanging out with Mr. Steven Glicker. I'm getting in late. We're going to get some dinner. Wednesday, we're going to get his van ready, pack up all of the stuff for the booth. And then Thursday morning, we're going to leave New York. We're going to head to Philly, set up the booth. And then the con starts Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I fly back Monday. So we should be back. So basically, I'm out for this week, but we should be back next week. Although, you know me, I always like, I miss you guys. I want to get online, hop online and hang out with you guys. So we'll see what happens when it goes on. But yeah. Should be fun. Should be exciting. Hopefully, if you get a chance to run into you, I'll be walking around. I'm sure I'll be at the Roll for Combat booth here and there, but I'll be around, hanging out. And don't hesitate to stop by and say hi if you're in the area. I hope to see some of you. Say hi. And yeah, Mech Week was a nice little success. So we'll capstone it when I get back with a little Battletech. And thank you so much for supporting me, and thank you for filling out the PAX Fun Fund. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to not spend too much money because Fabula Ultima kind of really tapped me out. And all that other stuff. So I think it's really great. But yeah, it was it was a fun little a check for a wheel. Enrique says, "Hey, I was listening while driving, so a delayed comment. Thanks for taking an indie game as seriously as one with $1 million budget, even after poking a bit fun at the cover art and layout." Well, I mean, a game is a game, and if it's good and there's cool ideas there, and if it's based off of something that's really awesome, and I think there's no budget on great ideas and a great game. Now, to be clear, layout and art do matter. Especially more for other people than some. I'm not as much of an art, and I like what I like. I dislike what I like. I dislike what I dislike. I like what I like. And layout can be a thing, but I also understand that is expensive. I mean, as someone who maybe one day wants to make something, I am quite aware of the fact. In fact, I would argue that one of the reasons I would have a hard time producing a game is because I would want it to be held to a pretty high standard. And I understand that maybe isn't really realistic for someone with no budget and, no experience. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun game. I love Mutants and Masterminds. I think they did a great job of doing it. I love the genre point system. It seems like it's really complicated, but when you start looking at the actual how complicated the mech and the pilot is, it's actually not that bad. Obviously, if you start getting more and more points, it'll become worse. But yeah, I mean, it seems cool, fine, fun, even. I don't know how long the fights will play out. I'm guessing a lot faster than Lancer. I did think if I was going to steal anything, I thought the layers of hit point, the ablative layers of hit points for the pilots. I mean, they have it for the mechs too, where you start losing systems, which is fine. But for the pilots, I think that's a really cool system. And I love the idea of sort of like a short-term encounter-based resource, a medium-term session-based resource, and then a long-term multi-session or arc-based resource. And so you kind of get to, and I loved that they used tension. The escalation system is great. I love that they started at 1. That's very smart. And I like that they had the ultimates kind of tie into the tension system as well. So there's good outside of any sort of cool mechy anime stuff. And I also say that while I still prefer my Battletech chicken walkers, these mechs were much more, Gundam Voltron coded, which I'm totally okay with, as opposed to some of the crazy weird things in Lancer. So I much more appreciated the design of this as well from an art direction perspective. So yeah, I think it's great. I like Mutants and Masterminds. With a mech game, again, you're building 2 complete characters. I'm gonna ding it for that, not because that's just not for me. I mean, if that's your thing, if you want to spend 160 points on your character and then go spend 160 points building your mech, mazel tov, go knock yourself out. But for me, I'm not at that point in my life right now. Same thing with Mutants and Masterminds. If I was to play a superhero game right now, I would not reach for Mutants and Masterminds, even though it is arguably my favorite game. It's kind of like how 3rd edition is my favorite RPG of all time. Will I ever play it again? Probably not. So yeah, I'm going to give the game, a strong B+. I think it's, I think there's some really cool ideas in there. The system seems to probably work pretty well. It's hard to fuck up a D10 plus bonus versus DC. It's, tried and true. Nothing revolutionary about it, but it works. It gets the job done. It doesn't have too much narrative, foo-foo or bullshit or anything like that. But you do get a little bit with the genre points, which are cool, which are used to make your really cool, awesome, broken power things. In other words, lean into your character's genre tropes. You'll get cool meta currency that lets you break the game and, be over the top and be like, no, this ends now, right? And you don't get to do that unless you do the things that tie into your character's, stereotype, core theme, identity, and your fatal flaw. And so that is a system that promotes a certain amount of role playing, and I like that. So, mechanically induced role playing, as they say, meta currency. Some people call it bribing people to role play. Whatever. I'll take it where I can get it. So I'm gonna go because I got a pack for tomorrow for my flight. But it was a lot of fun hanging out with you all. Thanks so much, everybody, for supporting me these last couple of weeks. Again, this is a great case study in this channel, because obviously, these streams have not gotten a lot of views, but we get dedicated folks in here dropping some bucks, making the tips happen, and you know what? That is worth more to me than views. A lot more to me than views. I would need to get 20, 30, 40,000 views to get the kind of money I make from tips. So I would rather talk to the right people than talk to the most people. And if you found your way here to the Night's Last Call, you're the right people. So thank you so much. Thank you, Jans, for that last minute super chat. Appreciate you. Thank you, Thaddeus. Thank you, Karamak, for the tip, but also for the gold ticket that sponsored today's first look. Thank you to Elaine, Duncan, Act W, and Cinnabos for your Prime subs. Remember, if you have if you have Amazon Prime, you can use a Prime sub every week or every month to your favorite streamer. It doesn't cost you any money. Gives me a couple bucks, or gives another streamer a couple bucks, but you should use it or lose it. Lion's Head Gaming, Clubster Roll, and Cal. Also, thank you so much for your tips, super chats, and supports as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining out with us, hanging out with us with Mech Week. The patrons on Night's Last Call are busy trying to figure out how to make this Lancer game actually happen. Sounds like it's going to happen. We just got to figure out a few nuts and bolts, and then we'll try to do something like that. It'll probably be something like a 12-week, 12 to 15 week mini campaign, rather than like a big half year or 3/4 of a year. It'll probably be more like a 3-month campaign. But I think we're going to do it, and hopefully we can. There's a lot of momentum behind it, so I think we're going to take a look at that. Hopefully it works out. Fingers crossed. But you never know with these things. But Mech Week will conclude in a little bit when due to our reaching our goal, where we'll take a look at BattleTech, the real mech game. And then from there, who knows? And maybe at one point we can eventually talk to. Maybe we'll cover, Daggerheart, or games that people are really hyped about and popular about. Although I don't know, Daggerheart, the hype has seemed to fall off a little bit. Just again, I was really worried about that. That Critical Role going with D&D was going to hurt the hype. But we'll see. Maybe this Dungeons of Dragonheim thing will reinvigorate the community. I don't know. Wes says 13 weeks, one for each level. Wes, I don't think we would do once a week level up, because it is pretty complex and complicated. I would probably actually keep the entire campaign at tier 1, and probably just go from 1 to 4. So, I'm still hyped for Daggerheart, Unfortunate Pumpkin. I just don't know what to do with it. I don't think anybody knows what to do with it. I think that's the problem. Like, from a content creation standpoint, obviously I wanted to do an actual play, but that got, shot because I had 3 players and now 2 of them are basically unavailable. So, so again, what to do with Daggerheart, that's easy. Play it. Like, that part's easy. For you as a player or a game master, it's easy. Play it, have fun, tell cool stories. As a content creator, whether that be, creating game content or YouTube content, actual play content, Discord, Patreon content, Dagger Reaches content, that's the more challenging part, because I'm not really quite sure what to do with it. Right? I also would be lying if I didn't say, and I don't even know why it happened, because we did that One Ring first look back in like February, but somehow that game, I don't know what did it, but that game has really, locked me in. So Elaine, we're going to do the solo content. We unleashed the darkness of Khazad-dûm from our $300 tip goal. So we're going to be doing that Moria solo game. Again, I've got to go to PAX, and but when I get back and we're kind of locked into holiday mode, right? I'm going to be here. It'll be snowing outside. I'll have a nice hot cup of tea, and we'll be playing some. We'll be doing some chat plays Moria. I mean, I have never played a solo game, Elaine, so I'm a little hesitant myself. We'll see. I don't know. Enrique, here's the thing. It's not about letting the Dagger hype die, Enrique. It's a problem of, and again, I do not want to seem like I am throwing anyone under the bus here. That is not my intention. Full stop. Okay. The problem is, the game came out a couple months ago. I was excited about it. They fixed a couple of core issues I had with it when we played it, when it was in beta, and taking a further deeper look at it really sort of, made me really appreciate the design of the game. But I have not, and this is me being truthfully honest, I have not gotten the reps with the game that I think a person should have in order to talk about the game. Now, obviously, that has not stopped other creators from doing videos or releasing products for sale about this game. That is not me. I feel like a fraud or a phony. Like, I'll talk about GM principles. I'll talk about GM moves, right? I'll dagger-splain some Lord of the Rings scene. But I don't really feel like I can truly give the best advice or create good rules for, say, Daggerheart, because I don't have, at least 100 hours of reps with the final version released of the game. So it puts me in kind of a tough spot, is what it comes down to, basically. Because for me to really feel comfortable with it, I need more time with it. So there's that. And again, that hasn't stopped other people. The other problem is, from what I can tell, what I can see from the community, because I do have to think about this not just from a Dagger hype perspective, but also from like a financial perspective, right? 2025 was kind of a free pass, right? I lost my job in April. I got a severance through June. Basically, I got 2 months. Well, mid-June, right? Because I got like two and a half months or whatever. I got five paychecks. So whatever that is. Yeah. So it's 2.5 months. I got 5 paychecks. So, you know, April, May, June, obviously things were still really chaotic and hectic for me. I'd lost my job, lost my dad. And then it was con season. I was running around a bunch, and I knew I was okay because I had money in savings. But I basically said 2025 is a free ride. In 2026, I have to basically make this channel profitable, to the point where I can pay all my bills, pay all my expenses, you know, pay Bob, pay my monthly fees for everything, you know, between everything from Adobe to sound rights to stock image rights to a Zoom subscription. I'm trying to think of all the various things, right? Like when I add up everything, like, you know, the cost to run this channel is probably around $1,000 a month. And that's me at home, give or take. It used to be much, much, much higher. And, you know, so the channel has to make that. Oh, Forge obviously is a huge component of that. Yeah. I mean, by the way, you're like, Derek, how do you get from a $100 a month Adobe subscription to $1,000? Well, Forge, we have 3 Forges, you know, hosting services, email, you know, all the stuff that a business does. So I have that. And, you know, I pay people and for the work that they do on the channel and all this other stuff. Postage, sending stuff out, buying products that then get shipped out, buying these PDFs and looking at that stuff. Anyways, $1,000 a month, which doesn't seem like a lot for a business, but then you have to realize that I don't make that much money. So I do need to make more money, and I'll figure out a way to do it, or, you know, or I'll go get a job, I guess. But Daggerheart is a much more likely way that I can do that. So it is definitely part of my objective. You know, outside of me liking the game, it also realistically has a good inroad to potentially being something. But yeah, I think Daggerheart's really, really cool. But what I was going to say is, it seems like the community, if I want to make money with Daggerheart, which I do, because, you know, I don't want to sound callous, but capitalism forces me to make certain decisions. The community seems way interested in adventures, not just for Daggerheart, but in general. I'm basically fundamentally opposed to adventures, but the idea of making a Daggerheart adventure is particularly anathema to me. And so, you know, like, creating content for Daggerheart that I want to be financially successful probably takes me down a road that I am not as interested in. So it does put me in a little bit of a weird space. That's all. I would say campaign frames kind of fall into that same, kind of the same space. I mean, I think campaign frames are better than writing adventures jams, but, you know, and like, like, you know, I mean, campaign frames are good. The problem with campaign frames that I have is how many campaign frames do you need? Like, this is just me being very practical. Like, obviously, like, I think doing one where you really fundamentally shake up the game is really cool, but then that introduces a lot of extra work and problems. And especially if you're creating new rules, I want those rules to be play tested. I hate the idea of releasing something that's not play tested. But, you know, I think if you're really doing something interesting and cool with them, I think that could be really interesting. But I do think that Daggerheart adventures just don't really make a lot of sense. And I mean, shout out to Mike Underwood, who I love. I think he does a great job, and I think his channel's criminally underviewed. He's making these adventures for the dungeon Drakkenheim people, which makes sense. He was one of the co-designers of the game, so he knows his stuff. But I just don't think. I think that's kind of missing the entire point. So, and again, I'm saying things here that I think are a little bit. They really apply to me. I don't think they apply to the game. Okay. The other problem is the other thing that I think might be popular would be creating new adversaries. But the problem is I actually don't really care or think that you need adversaries in Daggerheart. I think people are getting too caught up in the mechanics of the adversaries in a way that isn't necessarily helpful. Like, we did adversary creation on this channel, and I thought it was a fine process. But the truth of the matter is, and this is my personal bias, I look at Daggerheart and I very much see a game of PBTA. I see a game where the players can't die unless they want to. I see a game where we have success with complications. We have failures with opportunities. It's a very players are the kick-ass heroic, people of the universe. I don't need 4th edition style monsters for that kind of game. Okay. I don't need monsters with this complicated. I see people on Reddit. I see people, I see people on Reddit. I see people on whatever, on even in the Discord, but I see people on Reddit. I see people on Discord. I see people on YouTube, and they're talking about these adversaries in a way that's just a little bit too, D&D coded, I guess would be the term I would use. And I think it's fine, to have that stuff there, but it's again, it's probably very useful. Here's the problem. The problem is what I think that you need for an Ankeg. And I'm talking about this. We've talked about this before. But okay. Like, I think that all you need for something like an Ankeg, okay, is, this. It has a bite. It has 10 hit points, 3 armor. It has the close and reach. The special quality is burrowing. All of this is flavor text. You can ignore all this. Its instinct is to undermine, and then it has 3 bullet points. Undermine the ground, burst forth from the earth, spray forth acid, eating away at metal and flesh. And I know this because I've used this monster before many times in Dungeon World. Now, here's why what I'm saying is terrible advice, and it's great advice. Because it's terrible advice because when you learn how to run this, what the hell's going on here? When you learn how to run this monster and run it well using just this stat block, okay? Because some people might see this and go, oh, so the only thing this thing can do is bite? It's like, no, its instinct is to undermine. It'll undermine the ground. It'll burst forth from the earth. It'll spray forth acid, eating away at metal and flesh. This is all I need to run this monster in Dungeon World and in Daggerheart. Now, the reason why I say it's bad advice is because I get it. For, 90% of game masters out there, seeing these 3 bullet points is not enough for them to feel comfortable running this monster. And to be clear, if we were playing Pathfinder 2 or even D&D 5th edition, I might agree with you. But this isn't that. But I think there's a lot of people who've got it into their headspace that, like, balance matters and it's a thing, and it's not. There's no way you can get this wrong. But people are coming into the game from a different place, and I get it that, I'm aware that I'm not where they are. And so I think you are much better off learning how to run this monster just like this. But that's not helpful Because if I made you a Daggerheart bestiary that looked like this, that's not going to help anybody. Because they don't know how to use this. And so instead you give them the stats. Okay, but the problem is when you give them the stats, and they don't learn how to do this. And they become obsessed with how many armor slots should this, should this cost fear? Should this cost stress? How many armor slots should this reduce? How does this interact with the Guardian's ability? What's the range on it? And to my response, truthfully, honestly, passionately, compassionately, is it doesn't fucking matter. That's my answer. It doesn't fucking matter. But now I might be misrepresenting Daggerheart. And in fact, in some ways, I think I am. So and maybe that's another reason I'm hesitant to make a speech, is because, some of the things that I'm saying, I don't know that Daggerheart agrees with me in that respect. I look at Daggerheart and I see a game that is, it's pretending to be crunchy and tactical, but it's actually not. But I feel like they keep saying it is, and I don't want to gainsay them and tell them that they're wrong or that people are doing it wrong. So Jam says, I guess it's maybe that Darrington Press does pitch Daggerheart as having crunchy combat. So maybe people get the impression that it needs these numbers. And Jams, you are exactly right. You are 100% right. And they make it seem like there is this balance and you need to think about, oh, well, should this cost 1 stress or 2 stress? And I don't want to, but if I ran this in Daggerheart, I know what the levers are. Right? What are the levers? You can fuck with hit points, stress, armor slots, disadvantage, advantage. You can generate fear. You can consume hope. Right? And that's all I need. Right? This is all I need to do. And I'll just make something up, make a GM move, and then I'll use this, to describe what the monster is doing. And in fact, now I'm getting to the point, and it's like, oh, the player rolled, with fear. And, I described that, the player misses and the creature, burrows into the ground. And then, there's this moment the characters are going like, where is it? I don't see it, and then I spend a fear to have the creature erupt into the middle of them, bursting forth from the earth. And I go, everybody make an agility reaction, check, or be knocked prone, and then the creature spins and turns on 2 PCs that are knocked prone. And I just go, oh, you guys are kind of close together. I don't care what the range is. I don't care about AoEs. Psst, I spray you guys with acid, right? Roll D4, mark off that many armor slots, and if you don't have enough armor slots, then take it as hit points. Is that balanced? Is that broken? I don't know. Do I care? No, I can't kill the players anyways. What difference does it make? This Ankh head could do 10,000 damage. It would do 3 damage or 3 wounds or whatever. They would mark 3 hit points or whatever. It just doesn't matter. Anyways. And people are just so caught up in this idea of it being but they're like, but the monster says it has to do this and the monster has to do this. And I'm like, no, the truth of the matter is I look at monster stat blocks the same way I look at environmental stat blocks. Useful, totally unnecessary. Useful, totally unnecessary. An environmental stat block can be a great idea to help you create a cool mechanic. I mean, part of the fun of Daggerheart is getting to do things mechanically. There is a fun to doing something mechanically, marking stress, taking hit points, healing hit points. Outside of the fiction, outside of the narrative, those things are important. But there is a fun part to the fiddliness of games. And Daggerheart scratches that itch in a way that a lot of PBTA games don't. I'll be completely honest. It's one of the reasons I like Daggerheart. However, this idea that we have to be so concerned about the exact balancing points of all this stuff, I think is quite frankly utterly nonsense. And I see people they even debate it in my Discord all the time about like, well, does the GM ever have the spotlight? Well, because if the GM has a spotlight, can the GM take the spotlight? If the GM is taking a move, but can the spotlight play with the who gives a shit who has the spotlight? Like, these arbitrary terms mean nothing. And it's because people want to follow the rules. But the fact of the matter is there are no rules. The game tells you that the GM can make a move whenever they want. So yeah, it just doesn't matter. I've said, Pumpkin, a longtime awesome member of our community, said it best. This game is emulating being tactical. You get to pretend that you're like this really cool squad of really tactical characters, but you're really not. You're just using your cool powers and making shit up and telling stories. So I think there's a little bit of an identity crisis with Daggerheart in that I know who it is, or at least I think I know who it is, but I think that the game's marketing, or maybe the way that people are perceiving the game's marketing, is a little different. And I think I see that a little bit with the way that Spencer and Rowan and Elise even talk about the game. And I hear them say these words, and then I see their audience hear these words and either not get it or like plug their ears and say, no, I'm not going to listen. I need to think about the fear balance. I need to think about the fear meta currency, action economy. And it's like, no, you don't. It just doesn't. It just, like, I don't know that they still happen, but I don't know how many times I saw on Reddit, the number of times I saw posts that were basically something like, it's ridiculous. The Guardian character uses unstoppable ability, and it's like I couldn't bring him down. It was like he was unstoppable. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. What an awesome moment for that character. I'm like, it just hurts my brain. Now, again, I need, as an educator on YouTube, as an educator, but also as someone who needs to make money off of this thing, I do need to find a way to reach that audience of people. And I'm just having a hard time with it because, like, I'm here, or I'm like here and they're like up here. We're missing each other, ships passing in the night. So yeah, I guess that's the problem. Hey, Elia, good to see you. Been quietly following Mech Week VODs and face palming in agony. I'll have to catch the VOD for this one too. I'm looking forward to seeing more Battletech, actual mechs. We love to see it. That's perfect. We'll have a lot more fun with the Battletech. So yeah. But yeah. Yes, people want the rules to matter. And they don't. Not in this game anyways. I mean, that is the answer. And that is the answer. People want the rules to matter and they don't. Actually, it's funny that you say that, Platinus. Because people are so weird. Because I'll show them a game where the rules don't matter and people can't handle it. And then I'll show them a game where the rules are inviolate, right? Where the rules, like in Torchbearer, when you're playing Torchbearer and it's the GM's turn, and I get to make a decision, I say what the skill check is. You get no saying on that. The whole point of Torchbearer is to challenge the player character's skill list and to say, you guys need to make a cooking test. That's it. And the only thing that can help cooking is this and this. That's it. And if you don't have cooking, there's ways in the game to try to improvise and make a test or whatever. Maybe you guys get fucked on this skill. I don't know. But Torchbearer is a game where it's like the rules are the rules and that's it. But then people lose their mind with those games too. It's like the games that people want to play are games that go, here is a lot of rules. And these are the rules. But also, no. Make it up. I don't, it hurts. It's okay. I guess the best example I could say is it's like let's say you have a friend and they're really picky and they only eat chicken tenders. And you say, we're going to go to Cane's. And they say, no, I don't want to go to Cane's. And I go, but all they serve is chicken tenders. You'll be fine. You go, no, I want to go to a real restaurant. Or no, I don't even want to go to a real restaurant. I want to go to a restaurant that has a large menu. We could go to a buffet. I want to have a menu that has, I want to go to a Cheesecake Factory. I'm talking about like a 10, 13, 15 page menu. I want to go to a buffet. I want to go to a hometown buffet. I want to have hundreds of choices. And I go, okay. And they get there and then they order the fucking chicken tenders. And it's like, why did we have to come to this restaurant if you're just going to get the chicken tenders anyways? We all knew that. We all knew that. So just go to the restaurant that only serves chicken tenders. But people go, no, I need choice. So I need to have all these options so then I could ignore them. It's kind of a separate tangent, but I was getting into an argument once. It wasn't an argument, it was a friendly debate. But this was a buddy of mine who I used to play RPGs with back in the day. He hasn't played in a long time. And we used to play during 3rd edition. And he was a rules lawyer. He was a min-maxer. He was the only person in my group that was really that. And as our group kind of started to evolve and change and get a little bit more mature, he left the group because I think he wasn't enjoying it as much. Anyways, many years ago, we were talking about, he was living with me during COVID to save some money. It helped me out, actually, too. But we were getting into a debate, and I was saying, like, because he always loved coming up with crazy outside the box solutions and bending the rules or breaking the rules or using, he never played 5th edition, but he's the type of person that would be like, peasant railgun to kill the dragon type thing, right? That was his shtick. And I basically told him, I go, I don't understand. Like, why don't you want to play? Okay, you want to do crazy things that, are outside of the box. Great. So why don't you play a game like, he never played, but I had explained what Powered by the Apocalypse was. And he's like, no, I hate that game. I hate that idea of that game. He goes, why don't you play a game like Fate or Powered by the Apocalypse where all of your really cool, crazy ideas can be handled better? And he goes, no. And I go, well, why do you want to play a game with so many rules? He goes, I want to play a game that has a lot of rules so that I feel awesome when I know that I'm breaking them all. And it was like a record scratch / light bulb moment. And I was like, oh, the whole point is that you want to be like better than the system. Karama says, I need the list of options so that I can be better than the players that pick the wrong options. It's kind of the same idea, Karama. You're absolutely right. But it was like, for him, he loved knowing that there were rules and that he was breaking them, that he was getting away with something. So, anyways, it was a whole thing. And I mean, and there's a reason why, but it's not just system mastery, Wes. There's two types of things, right? There's system mastery, which I agree is a thing. It's a type of fun, right? And that's kind of what Karama's talking about, right? Building the game and beating it because you built a good character. But there's this other idea of like, I want a game where the rules are sacrosanct, but then I want to ignore them, Platinum says, I love a game with a ton of options, but I got my build off of Reddit because there's too many options. Yeah, it's like, so it's a tough spot to be in. Anyways, this was a rant. This was a tangent off of a tangent off of a tangent, but tangents and sidebars, right? Cinnabos says, I have that in me. I fight it with every part of me. Yeah, it is apparently a real thing for people. And so I think there's an idea that people have with Daggerheart that that the game is more mechanically focused than it is. And I don't think it is. And it's weird to me. It's funny to me because these are the same people who are running and playing their 5e games, and they are ignoring rules left and right. There may even be fudging rules and hit points left and right. And that's another interesting. So Elia says, it's easier to ignore rules you don't like than to want them and not have them. See, I'd rather have the minimal viable product. You know what I mean? Rather than having this unbelievably labyrinthine list of rules. But yeah, so I personally think, given the principles and the agendas of Daggerheart, that adherence to I hate ignoring rules too, to be completely honest with you. Because I like that the rules are a partner to me to help me tell games. They are not a hurdle, and they are not if I'm having to ignore rules, then I'm probably playing the wrong game. That's my thought process. If I'm having to change all these rules, if I'm having to ignore rules, I'm probably playing the wrong game. And then I really have to start asking myself about juice to squeeze ratios. So now, to be clear, when you play PBTA, there is a problem in PBTA where, there's not a lot of crunch and it can get a little boring. Daggerheart solves that issue by giving the players cool little mechanical doodads in cards and class features, which are mostly combative focused. And that's great. And we should totally use those. However, the fundamental premise of the game is still one of, this is not a simulationist game. And I don't think it's a fully gamist game. I think it is more of a narrative forward game than anything else. And the primary goal of it is to create story experiences, right? The whole fate or fear economy, not just in terms of generating fear, but rolling with fear, is the idea that the GM is constantly throwing you curveballs because it creates for a more feral and evocative and interesting story. But again, there are some people say, I want to tell a story independent of anything else. And this set of rules is maybe going to help me do that. That's one way of people thinking about that. That I'm putting words in her mouth, but that's the Alia way of thinking of it. It's the Vin way of thinking about it, right? Which is like, level one, I want to tell a story, or, I want to simulate a world. And okay. And then it's like, I'm shopping for a rule set that is going to let me, that's going to do what I want it to do that story. My way of thinking is opposite. I look at a rule set and I think, what kind of stories does this rule set generate? What kind of stories does this rule set allow? What kind of stories does this rule set help, motivate, and push? And then I do that. So I approach it from sort of from a bottom up perspective instead of a top down perspective. I guess I do a lot of things bottom up, and I think a lot of people start top down, right? A lot of people start with vibes and feelings and ideas, and I start with this fundamental premise of, what is this rule set trying to do, and how does it help me generate the story? Because that's what this game system is supposed to be for. I don't have a cool idea for a concept and then jam a game system into it and then get frustrated and irritated when that game system doesn't completely meet all of my needs. And then I've got to start dropping systems, and I've got to start homebrewing systems, and I've got to start finding third-party modules to hack into it. And at that point, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, what's the problem? To me, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it. I'd rather look at a game and say, what does this game do? And that's why when I look at a game system and I go, and I ask myself, the big three questions, right? Jared Sorensen, right? What does this game do? And if the answer is kind of nothing, then I am very unmotivated to use it or play it. Or if what it does is so meaningless and generic as to really not push the generation of interesting stories, then I'm also not interested in it. right? Because I do have a bias. I don't want to just create stories, right? I got up today. I woke up. I went to the park with my dogs, and then I went to Starbucks and I got a cold brew, and then I went to a grocery store and I got some food for the refrigerator for my roommate who comes home tomorrow. And that's a story. It's not an interesting story. So I don't want just a game that creates stories. I want a game that creates interesting stories. I am very capable of telling uninteresting stories. I don't need a game system to do that. I want a game system to help me tell interesting stories. Anyways, I was going off there for a little bit. Beowulf says there are a lot of people out there who love Raw and finding broken combos and then holding the GM to the Raw so that they can beat them. Absolutely. The spike mindset is part and parcel of the D&D mindset. D&D 5th edition is not that much, believe it or not, it is a spiritual, it's not like it's some 18th cousin twice removed. It's like the grandchild of D&D, which was a war game. So yeah, it's very much built into the DNA of D&D about this idea. Even the marketing nowadays, right, is like, watch the DM cry when you pull out this sick new feat. And I'm like, damn, that's disgusting. You must score a narrative-focused game with loose tactical elements. That is how I would describe Daggerheart. So I'm right there with you, Mesker, man. Pumpkin says, I too, Derek, would rather just play a well-designed game than hack a poorly designed one. Yes. Or I would accept that I want to tell a game that's like this. Well, the system I'm using doesn't do that. Okay, well, then I probably should change my idea. Right? Instead of being like, okay, time to start Frankensteining this thing and trying to start, throwing clay on it and trying to mold it and shape it into something that it's not. I just don't have the time for that. And I don't, quite frankly, think the results are usually good. And, maybe if you literally go through the process of literally building up your own game system, but at that point you are just doing game design. So that's like a separate enterprise, I think. Yeah. Also true, Wes, right? Some people don't want to learn new systems. I guess, like, I'm trying to think of a great example of this. Okay. Let's say I have potatoes. Okay. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to make mashed potatoes. And somebody says, I don't want mashed potatoes. I want pasta. And I go, okay. And at this point, I have three options. One, I have potatoes. We should eat mashed potatoes. Two, I go and buy pasta and then we eat pasta. Three, I figure out how to make pasta out of potatoes, which you can do, gnocchi. But that is a really involved process that involves a lot of work and a lot of specialized gear. Most people just buy their gnocchi. And so that is when I see people who basically say, that's great, but some people don't want to learn new systems. That's fine, Wes. As long as they're like, I have potatoes, I'm eating mashed potatoes. We have no problem. The problem is when the only thing in your house is potatoes and you start going, oh, but I want to have pasta, but I also want to have, pie crust. And I also want to have, and it's like, look, you're either going to need to get some new ingredients, or you know what I mean? Or you're going to have to buy some new ingredients, or you're going to have to do a lot of work. And I think it's crazy that people would go, I'm not going to learn a new system. Instead, I'm going to spend hundreds of hours, I don't know, researching, buying new third-party supplements and hacking something. I mean, it's just like the amount of work that people do. And then, by the way, the final product, not even that good, right? Because you do make your homemade gnocchi, okay? And guess what? It fucking sucks because you don't know how to make gnocchi. It was the first time, so it's terrible. Yeah, I'm a simple man. I like, easy, clear, direct. I do have a potato ricer Thaddeus, so because I like to make good mashed potatoes. Well, that's true, Wes. Wes makes an excellent point. Well, it's not them that have to do the 100 hours of work. They are expecting the cook, the DM, to do it. That is an excellent point, which brings back to the whole point, which is fuck your players. Oh, man, well, I'm running another 5th edition campaign because my players won't play anything else. Get new players. Join Knights of Last Call. I get it. I don't want to play online either, but that's how it has to be. That's how it has to be. I don't know. I'm not even saying that's as a knock against 5th edition. If my group was really like, Derek, we really, really want you to run this game, and I'm like, I don't want to run that game, I'm not running that game. I just won't. That part is crazy to me. So, that plug for the Patreon was like, yeah, James, got a little, sometimes we got to market it up, but I really do mean it, which is, the number of people I see all the time saying, yeah, I'm still running 5th edition because my players won't change. It's like, fuck your players. They're not doing any work. Anyways, I'm right there with you. Elia says, I'd rather not GM at all. I'd rather not GM at all than GM a game I don't want to GM. Quite right. 100%. So, I was even talking about, somebody was like, when I was really hyped about the One Ring and I was going to run the solo game, and someone's like, oh, Derek, are you going to run it for the patrons? And I said, maybe. I said, but the truth of the matter is that I'd have to have the right player. I'm like, look, I don't need a player who knows, the ins and outs of, the Noldorian elves and, can name me all of, the sons and daughters of Thingol. I don't need that. But I need somebody who wants to play the One Ring or the Lord of the Rings because they are at some level fundamentally interested in the world of Middle-earth, and that they are fundamentally interested in the stories and the nature and the themes of the stories that Middle-earth is about. And if you're not, if you're going to show up to the game and, just play it like you're playing D&D or Pathfinder 2, I just won't have you in my game. And you're like, well, then you won't have enough players. And then I just won't run the game. I'm okay with that. I'd rather not run a game I'm really interested in running than run it for a bunch of yahoos who are just going to shit all over my game anyways, or not really respect it or bother to learn it or, give it the time and care and appreciation that it deserves. And that's true for anything. That's not just the One Ring. It could be any game. If you're running a very serious type game and somebody was like, hey, I want to be a cat centaur named Mr. Scruffles, no, get the fuck out. If you're not, well, then fine. I guess you don't get to play because we all wanted to be Mr. Scruffles. And I'm like, well, then I just won't run the game for you. Go find somebody else. I'm okay with that. Apparently there are people who are not. So, but this is also why I'm single. So, like in real life, because that's also my philosophy for relationships. People are like, relationships are about compromise. And I'm like, oh, is that why I'm bad at them? I'm not, I'm not good at that. What can I say? I'm uncompromising in many ways, in many things. So, all right, all these rants took an extra hour. I was going to be done at 9, and now it's 10:15. So I do have to pack. I'm going to dip out, and I'll probably come live from PAX. I'll of course be checking in with the patrons and everything like that. So thank you again to everybody who hung out with me, and that was a nice little fun rant there. We love it. Let's see what else is going on. No, that's it. I don't know if we're going live from PAX. I don't know. Steven was talking about me being live with him on Wednesday on Roll for Combat. So potentially you might see me Wednesday on Roll for Combat sitting next to Steven. So maybe check me out there. Otherwise, hope you guys have a great week. And I hope we see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace out.